welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. I appreciate you all giving up this wonderful evening to spend with our wonderful guest, Dr. Douglas Frank. And it's nice to see so many wonderful people here. Can everybody hear me? Yes. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So, my name is Michael Fanger, and I was asked to stand in front of you and host this event. I know a little bit about our guests, but before we get started, if you all rise, face the flag, and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You bet. So, like I said, my name is Michael Fanger.
Is that your chair?
I appreciate all of you being here. I think it was.
Okay, that's fine.
And so we're very fortunate today to renowned speaker. He's doing about 300 of these presentations a year. And we're going to be, he does this, he comes here on his own dime. So we're going to take a collection and we're going to do that afterwards. What I'd like you to do is to take a look at this and you'll be seeing it for the first time just like I am. Except for I have looked at a few videos because I just wanted to know a little bit about this guy. And I saw that he had been involved in an election integrity. And I saw that he had been published as a scientist in one of the greater magazines that are out there. And what I saw was a man who was very credible in the eyes of academia and many people. And then he started talking about things like elections. Then he started talking about things like algorithms and some inconsistencies. And he started talking about probabilities and things that lend credence to who he is, which is a mathematician. And as a mathematician, I've always liked mathematicians. Although I will admit it took me a long time to figure out why 2 plus 2 is the same as 2 times 2. But I did eventually figure that out. But what I liked is that no matter how many times I got the answer wrong, I was able to figure it out eventually and learn the truth. And I think that's what a lot of us are here for. That's why we're giving up such a wonderful afternoon. And so in order to stand in front of you, what I wanted to do was make sure that I knew a little bit about this guy. I didn't want you to come up here. I didn't want to represent something I couldn't stand behind. So it was very important for me to start looking into Dr. Douglas Frank. And like I mentioned before, he had been author of 60 papers in a lot of reputable magazines. He taught in academia. I know he's currently under several NDAs, which are non-disclosure agreements. He can't tell us about many of the wonderful things that he's done. But as an inventor, I can clearly see that he's an accomplished individual. And so with elections, I don't know about you, but I've been around long enough to remember things like hanging chads. So I began to look at things back then because intuitively I began to go, wait a minute, something doesn't make sense. And I can go through each one of those presidential runs and I can talk about the things that I saw, but I'm sure that many of you saw things too. So one of the cool things about today is that we saw in the last election that it was the most safest and secure election we ever had. And I thought that's awesome. You know, we had COVID and we had electronic elections and so we were seeing a change in the world right in front of us. And no matter how you feel about those, you know, we have to at some point begin to understand that these are supposed to be our trusted institutions, right? We've all got such busy lives. The husband, the wife work, the kids got things. We don't have the time we used to have to pay attention to these things. But today, we're learning that maybe we shouldn't do that. We should have been paying attention. In fact, my best friend who died a few years ago, Jim Doucette, God rest him, he says to me one day, he goes, Mike, in my family, we were taught that you don't talk about religion and you don't talk about politics. And I said, yeah, I was taught that too, Jim. And he goes, but that's all you ever talk about. And I said, well, I did the reason I do is because looking at circumstance that we've gotten into by not talking about those things is we've literally got to a place where we can't talk about those things, right? Maybe we should have been. Maybe we need to learn how to have difficult conversations. And the best way to do that is to have a trusted news source. So when it comes to math, we're looking at debatable absolute truths. So he's going to present a lot of different things here. Open your minds, open your hearts, listen to what he has to say. We'll have a Q&A at the end of it all. And if you so inclined, and you found this presentation to be useful, and I think you will, if you would give a little contribution to help him so we can continue to keep doing these things across our great nation. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over and introduce you to Dr. Douglas. Thank you.
Thank you. I think somebody's going to turn off the front lights, right? So that it makes it easier to see the screen. How great to be with you. I was just in Oregon a week ago with the people from Polk, and about a month before that, yes, and I told my schedulers, I have two schedulers that do all my scheduling for me because I'm on the road almost constantly, and I told them we need to make Oregon a priority. And I did that because Polk County woke up, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. They woke up and they're engaging this movement in a very productive way. And then tonight I met, before I came here, with a team of people from your county, from Yamhill. And you have some really very active local people. And their question to me was, we already know how to work with the grassroots here. We've already had success in a lot of categories. We just don't know how to fix the elections. Guess what? That's just like, I'm drooling now. Because I know how to fix your elections. And it's not what most people think. So what I'm hoping is when you leave, you have a different mindset than you had when you came in. And then I feel like my time was productive with you. But I'm just so glad to be here. I'm tickled pink. I'm not pink though. Normally my talks, I give you a little introduction to history. Because what I want to do is I want to bring you through a process. Because I want you to catch up to me. I've been doing this every day since December of 2020. And I've analyzed 48 states worth of data right down to the precinct level, over 3,000 counties, in aggressive numeric ways. So I have a really good feeling what's going on in the country. I've been in 48 states in person, working with teams all over the country. I have a really good feeling about what's going on in each state. And I'll just tell you honestly, because you're in Oregon. When I was here a couple of years ago, I couldn't believe how depressing it was. I grew up in Northern California, and I used to come up here as a kid, and I would go fishing in the Umpqua and the Williamson, and because I grew up in Northern California on an Angus ranch. And so it was awesome then. But now it's like there's this pall of depression over your state. We got to wake you up out of that. We got to get you out of that. And it seems like in Yamhill, you've already kind of got a good spark going and a good little flame going. And I want to see if I can fan those flames and help you. But it was so cool to see Polk County way. But anyway, I'm going to give you a little history. I want to bring you through a process because I'm going to try to change your mind. And I can't just give you a fact to change your mind. I have to take you through a process. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to tell you what the problem is, and I'm going to show you some stuff for your own county. I got to tell you, I'm going to tell you I'm not a prophet, but after you do it 73 times, you know what everybody's going to say. And I sat down here before the meeting, and the first words out of the local team's mouth was, "Oh, Dr. Frank, our elections are pretty good here. We have good people in charge of our elections here." Everywhere I go, that's exactly the first thing that comes out of their mouth. I'm telling you, just like a tape recording. And all it does is it shows you that you don't understand what's wrong with your elections. Okay? If you knew what was wrong in your elections, you'd never say that. You would still say, yeah, we have great people, but that's not the problem. The problem is those great people you have are not in control of your election. That's the problem. If your great people were in charge of your election, if you were running your own election, you'd have fabulous elections. But you know who's running your election right now? Your state is running your election, not you. That's the problem. If you were running it, it'd be awesome. Because you have a lot of good patriots here. You have good people. You have motivated people, energized people. But you're not running your own elections, and that's the problem. I appreciated the introduction. You know, for decades, we've been letting other people run our government. And this group I met with earlier today, they said they kind of woke up in 2020. Yeah, a lot of us woke up in 2020, huh? Okay, and so that's the point. For too many decades, we were all asleep at the wheel while our enemies took over our country. We're in the process of taking it back, but you need strategies to do that. We need to know what's wrong and how to do that. And that's kind of what I've been learning along the way. I wouldn't say, like, I'm not just coming in here all smarty pants telling you what to do. I'm telling you, I've tried 73 other things. And as I travel the country, I'm gleaning the wisdom that I'm learning. I'm bringing that to you, and I'm constantly updating our strategies to improve it and whatnot. So I'm a good resource in that regard. So I'll tell you what the problem is, and then I'll give you the solution. I'm not just going to leave you hanging. There are a lot of people out there who tell you what's wrong with their elections, but I'm going to actually show you what to do. Okay, so that's what I'm all about. Everybody can see the screen okay? So this is where I was this morning, testifying at the Coos County Board of Commissioners, and it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. That's another one of the 3 counties. I think Coos, Polk, Yamhill, you need to form an axis. Think of this as a war, because it is. It's a 5th generation war. We're losing our country without firing a shot. Think of yourself as an axis. You 3 counties need to stand together and fight together, and I think you've got a slam dunk here. I've been doing this all around the country, and I think you have everything you need to pull this off. Anyway, I was testifying there, and one of the things that made me particularly happy is the people were carrying handguns into the public meeting house. That is awesome. Anybody open carrying tonight? Thank you for doing that. Shame on the rest of you. Okay? It's an important principle. Use your rights or lose your rights. And everybody needs to carry because that is your right. And you need to normalize that, you redneck MAGA people. Okay? Get that gun on there, man. Make a point out of it. I appreciate you doing that. It's super important you do that. You needs to normalize that behavior to continue to keep having it. So make that happen. I mean, I did it. He wasn't the only guy. Another guy got up and he had 2. I was in cloud 9 right there, man. That is exactly what it's supposed to be. Now in Shasta County, Northern California, they have about 75,000 there. That's one of our counties. We've taken over that county. It's very exciting. And we've taken our elections back there, which is exciting. I was in a commissioner meeting about 4 months ago when those commissioners there passed an amendment that allows all of their city employees and county employees to carry their guns into the building. So they only just got that right? You already have it, don't lose it, use it. Use it or lose it. And they had to vote it back in. And the reason they said that is because they're afraid of the people. I mean, when would you want to defend yourself? When you're in the government building and the idiots want to come around and shoot at you. That's when you'd want to defend yourself the most, I think. Anyway, I was just chicken pig on that. Now, the way I think of it is every state has a beachhead. And I think we finally have one here. I'm very excited about it. And what do I mean by that? When you're in a war, you don't attack Berlin the first day, right? You land on Normandy, you land on Omaha Beach. You choose strategic places that you can land and launch an offensive from there. And that's why I just told you what I think the beachhead is. I think it's Polk, Yamhill, and Coos. I think that's your beachhead. And we might be able to get some glommers on after we start moving in. Other counties may join us. I think Josephine might join us. I've done a lot of work there, but I've just been unable to get that moving off the ground. And I think it's because they had other priorities. And I get it, but it's hard to think of a more important thing than our elections, because it kind of affects everything else. But that's okay, people have their own priorities. I hope they join. This was last week in Polk. Yes, and some of the Polk people came over, right? And it was, we had an excellent meeting, 30 minutes. What? Washington. Sorry. Washington. But this was in Polk. They're Washington, sorry, that's Carmen, she's from Polk. But we got up and for 30 minutes, the citizens got up and gave 3-minute talks, one after another. And I gotta tell you, it's some of the best I've seen yet across the country. You can see that on YouTube, Polk County State Board of Commissioners meeting. You should listen to those 30 minutes. It was awesome. They had a flag wave beforehand. I don't know, about 100 people, something like that. More like 50? Okay, more like 50 people waving flags and carrying signs. and then they overflowed the room because too many people that fit in there, and some of us hung around afterwards and took pictures. It was a pretty cool day. That is super important. This concept is super important. You need to convince your commissioners that it's not just the one or two whiny women that are there every time. It needs to be a community movement. You need to have people showing up in numbers. If you don't have people showing up in numbers, you don't win. It's that simple. You have to do that. So that was a good day. It was the first step. And all we really did was we just told them what we were going to be doing. We weren't giving them a whole lot of evidence yet. And I'll explain what that means. But it was an exciting day. I was in this movie, The Curious Case of Coos County, a year or two ago when that came out. I testified in the Tim Sipple case as well. But I gotta tell you, your state's crazy. I was given a talk. I was in Josephine County. I was in a high school gymnasium, and I was on a Saturday, so the kids weren't there. I went potty during the break, and I went into the bathroom, and there was this tampon machine on the wall. And it's like I went, whoops, and I'm in the wrong bathroom. And so I walked back out, and it said man on the door, and I'm like, oh, I guess this is the men's bathroom. So I used the men's bathroom, and then afterwards I went back on the stage and I talked to the managers. I said, I thought I was in the wrong bathroom because there was a tampon machine hanging on the wall, and they said, no, that's our governor. They've ordered tampon machines to be hung in every high school boy's bathroom in the state. And he said, if you were in the wrong bathroom, you would have tripped over the kitty litter box on the floor. Yeah. Okay. That's crazy. Okay. What's wrong with you? Why do you tolerate that? See where I'm going with this? You're too compliant. You need to say, we're not going to put up with this anymore, right? This is silliness. We refuse to comply with this silliness. But you seem to be too compliant of a state. We got to wake you up a little bit, get a little rebellious spirit in here, maybe. Maybe Yamhill's got some of that. That's good. I was in the Tim Sipple case as well in Washington County, and I just want to mention one thing about it. I could spend about an hour proving to you that your machines are online, but I don't need to, because your own state admitted it. Okay? What happened was, in Washington County, Tim Sipple requested a copy of the voter rolls. The county clerk there made a mistake. She accidentally gave him a complete backup of her voting, of the EMS is called, her election management system. I mean, this is all the ballot images, all the software, everything. She accidentally gave him a complete backup. So when the Secretary of State found out about it, she panicked in your state, and she ordered the AG to order a temporary restraining order on Tim Sipple so he couldn't release any of those data to the public. And this is what it says in the temporary restraining order. Quote, even when systems are not directly connected to networks, they are vulnerable to attack through physical or wireless access. And during the lawsuit, the beautiful, she's like a 70-year-old little Japanese lady, short stature, very sweet lady. She was feeling very defensive because she'd made a mistake by giving the whole backup. And she was feeling like, well, people think I'm not competent. And she was in the witness stand. People think I'm not competent, but I understand my systems. I've been training my replacement. I'm planning to retire next year. And I can turn the modems on just by myself, even without a password. She said that in the witness stand. Okay? And those are the machines that she had just in the former sentences said they can't connect to the internet because they're behind an air gap. Yeah, I mean, you see what I'm saying? Okay, so I don't have to argue that. You've already admitted it, okay? So, and why is that important? There are a lot of reasons that's important, but mostly it's because your machines are online, you're telling anybody who wants to cheat how much to cheat and how to cheat. You're just giving away all the information. In a war, you don't tell the enemy where your stronghold is. You don't tell the enemy where you're weak. You don't give away information when you're in a war, and that's what you're doing with your machine. Basically, giving away the information. It's funny, this article said, this seems to contradict everything we've been told about the 2020 election in computer. Yes, it does contradict, doesn't it? And it's right there. So you get the point. The other thing that was fun about that lawsuit is they brought in an expert to say that I wasn't qualified to be an expert because I didn't have a PhD in political science. And so I wasn't qualified to do statistics on elections. And so I leaned into the microphone and I said, 1 + 1 is 2, even in physics and social science. Both in 2 + 2 is 4, both in social science and physics. And the judge is like, order in court, because I was sitting in the witness stand while he was on the Zoom call. And then he went on to say, oh no, we do mathematics differently in social sciences. If they had looked at my academic record, I used to teach the statistics classes to the political science students. So I know perfectly darn well. But anyway, that was interesting. When they finally ended that Zoom call, I leaned over to the microphone again. I was in the witness stand, and I said, this discussion reminds me of something Lincoln said. He said, how many legs does a dog have if you call his tail a leg? And I could see the judge reaching for the gavel again. And so I said, the answer is 4. Calling his tail a leg doesn't make it a leg, but it does in social science. Order in the court. And that is exactly the situation that we're in. I mean, you call a boy a girl, or a girl boy, and suddenly they become a girl or a boy. It's insane. Anyway, you get the point. Here is my appraisal of Oregon. And I mean this in all charity. I love you guys. I'm very on fire. But I slept in a cabin up in Salem, and there was this robin banging on the window one morning. You know what I'm talking about? Do you have those? They're attacking their reflection, and every morning he was waking me up early. I need to sleep in. Over and over again, day after day. What's wrong with him? He should figure out that's a waste of time, yes? But he keeps doing the same thing over and over again. And I have to tell you, that's what you're doing in your state with your elections. You guys are doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. Einstein says that's insanity. The definition of insanity is do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. I have a new strategy for you. I want you to use a new strategy. And the reason I'm suggesting it to you is because it's working. It's not because I'm Mr. Smarty Pants. It's working around the country. I've got dozens of counties, cities, and towns that have gone taking back control of their own elections. I want to show you how to do that. Anyway, so there's too many people on hamster wheels. They have great intention. They're working hard. Like, for example, people out there saying, we got to clean the voter rolls. We got to clean the voter rolls. You bet you do. You have some of the dirtiest voter rolls in the country. I would say you're in the top 10 worst voter rolls in the country, of Oregon. And you mail ballots to all those dirty voter rolls. So you have super dirty voter rolls and you mail ballots. Does that make sense? No, you're basically littering the pavement with ballots. It's a horrible situation. It compromises the integrity of all your elections. Anyway, so there are a lot of people who say, we want to clean the voter rolls. But there's a problem with that strategy. The problem is, you're not in control of your voter rolls. So if you clean your voter rolls, I can make them dirty tomorrow with a mouse click. In fact, your state is doing that to you. In state after state, teams go out and they work hard, they clean the voter rolls, and they think they're doing a good thing. And the next day, click, the state puts them all right back in again. You're not in control. So the problem isn't that the voter rolls are dirty. The problem is you're not in control of them. And that's where I'm here to tell you. You have to take back control of your elections. And as soon as you take back control of your elections, then you'll be able to start restoring integrity. So I've got to get you off those hamster wheels. So really what I'm about, I need to change the way you think. You need to kind of change some of your mindsets. And I'm going to give you some examples to teach you that. And how did I learn all this? Well, I've been traveling the country since December of 2020. I remember telling my wife, and it shows how naive I was in 2020. I said, honey, I was invited by the state of Pennsylvania to work on the election integrity there after the election. And I said to my wife, honey, I'm going to set aside my income for 6 months, and I'm going to save the country. And then I'll be back to work making money. And it was December 2020. And we were sitting there at Christmas this year, and we were looking at the family budget, and she said, okay, how much longer is this going to be, do you think? I said, honey, I think it's going to be the rest of my life. This country is far more corrupt, far more lost than I had any idea. We are in real trouble, and I think it's the rest of my career. She looked me dead in the eye. My wife, we just had our anniversary last week, 42 years, maybe 2 weeks ago. And she said to me, it's all right, honey. She looked me dead in the eye. She said, this is your calling. So that's my wife. I'm a good wife. And it is my calling. I know. I feel called by God. I'm in 48 states. Since December 2020, I'll explain that in a minute because I'm going to teach you some things through a story or two. Originally, I thought I could go on Zoom calls all over the country and I could spread all this information digitally and do movies and convince people, and I learned it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Jesus didn't send emails. He went town to town, meeting with people in person, and I've learned this is what really works. I need to be here with you, forming small teams. How many times have I been with you guys? It doesn't work by Zoom. You got to be together. You have to work together, and I think Jesus figured that out, which is why he came down and went town to town. And that's the most successful movement in history. So if you're trying to start a movement, that's the way to do it. That's the model I'm following. Well, because I've been traveling all over the country, middle of 2022, NPR did a hit piece on me. Not just me, Mike Lindell, Dave Clements, and Seth Keshel. And they noted at the time that I'd given about 150 talks so far, middle of the year. Actually, over that year, I did about 320. I'm telling you, I'm doing this every day. 320 talks that year. I've done over 600 now of formal events like this. So this is what I do all the time. But usually the way it works, like today, I did a commissioner meeting in the morning. In the afternoon, I met with a local team, and now I'm giving a talk. And tomorrow, it's going to be the same stuff. It's just like every day I get up and it's just grind all day long. But it's a war. So I'm in a war. I'm not complaining. I'm a happy soldier. I'm a happy warrior. Well, because of that, I got the nickname the Johnny Appleseed of election integrity. And I like that. I'm very flattered by that. Sean Smith is a retired colonel from the Air Force. I've done a lot of work with him around the country. He's probably the country's foremost expert on our election machines. If you want somebody to talk to you and give you technical information about your Hart intercivic machines, which are a joke, you can do a Zoom call with him. He loves doing Zoom calls from his cabin up in Colorado. He'll teach you about your machines. Good guy. They called me the Johnny Appleseed election integrity, and it's flattering. So I looked it up online because I hadn't thought about Johnny Appleseed since I was a kid, and I came across this movie on YouTube with Johnny Appleseed singing the Johnny Appleseed song. Do you know the Johnny Appleseed song? Sing with me. The Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need. Sun and rain and Appleseed, and He's been good to me. Isn't that a great one? So I was watching this and I was like, this is a cool movie, man. I like this. This is awesome. And then suddenly I stopped and my mouth fell open because this is a Disney movie. And it's like, whoa. Yeah, I mean, that's what Disney used to be. Right? Would they ever make that movie today? No way, Jose. They would never make that movie today. And it dawned on me, that was our country. Okay, and that was Disney, but that's not Disney today, and that's not our country today. Now we have tampons in boys' bathrooms. Okay? So we are not that country anymore. We have lost our way. We've lost our country. People say, oh, thanks for defending America, Dr. Ring. I'm not defending it. We already lost it. I'm getting it back. I'm fighting for the country that covenanted with God at the beginning. That's what I want to get back. We're fighting for that, to restore that situation. But, and by the way, who was responsible for this last 50 years? Me, you, all of us. We're the ones. I'm 63, and I was a physicist and doing all that wonderful science and having a great time, making money, raising my kids, and thinking life was great, and voted every year if I did my civic duty. Yeah, right, okay? That's why we're in the wreck we're in, because our civic duty is not voting every year. Our civic duty is being the government. America is an experiment in self-government. We're supposed to be self-governing, but we've been paying other people to do the government. We've been paying other people to teach our children. We've been paying other people to run our elections, and now look at the wreck we're in. We need to recover that and begin doing our civic duty again. So anyway, the Los Angeles Times did hit piece on me. It was pretty good, about 4 pages long. They did fancy graphics and everything, pretty fancy. This was the middle of last year, and they said, Dr. Frank has given more than 50 speeches. I'm over 90 now in California. And I'm bringing this up for a reason. Because when I first started going to California, the other guys doing this around the country were saying, stop going to California. You're wasting your time out there. You're wasting. Those people are communists. They're Marxists. They're way off. You're wasting your time. We need you in Georgia. We need you in Wisconsin. We need you in Michigan. Well, but they invited me. So I started going out there. And what did I find? I found a state that's Marxist and with communist oppression, and the place is a disaster. I grew up in Northern California, in Sonoma County. I know what it used to be like. It's not that way anymore. It's a disaster. But because the pain level is high, the people who are more awake. And every town I would go to, there's a little patriot group that's on fire. And all I had to do was meet with them, give them some instructions, and boom, they're taking off. I don't know, I mentioned Shasta County. That's a county that's gone completely paper, got rid of all their machines. Did you hear Huntington Beach just 2 months ago announced that they were going to run all their municipal elections locally, separate from the state system, in person at 120 precincts with photo ID and signature required. Okay? We have an election commission, we have convictions, voter fraud convictions. California is actually making more progress than anywhere else in the country. I'm not taking credit for that. I think the reason is because the people are suffering under the yoke of communism. So it's like they're awake. Well, come on, Oregon. You may be our number 2, okay? The next most oppressed by, there is tyranny. We're talking tyranny. Jefferson said when the people are afraid of the government, it's tyranny. When the government's afraid of the people, that's liberty. Do you want liberty or tyranny? Okay, start acting like it, okay? But you're not. Right now, you're kind of being complacent. Now, I admit, I have a preacher friend. He says he preaches to himself and he lets other people listen. I love that. So while I'm preaching at you here, wake up, wake up. I'm really preaching at myself too, right? Because I've been just as asleep as you, so I'm not picking on you in particular. But in Oregon, you guys of all people should feel the oppression, the tyranny, and you should rebel against that. You should stand up against that. And it sounds like you've already got a team that's pretty on fire here that's been doing that. So I'm excited. I just want to, in their own words, they said, we're just going to add another pillar in our work. It's going to be this election. I think that's the right approach. Yeah, very excited. So, MC mentioned I was a scientist, and I was nominated for a Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1990. I'm a real scientist. That's what I've been doing right now. That's what I've been doing right now. I have a beautiful lab out in the country. I closed my business down in 2017 and thought that's what I was going to do the rest of my life. But then COVID happened, and I started modeling that, doing all the first order differential equations on that for the whole world. Had like 150,000 followers every week. I was modeling your county from my basement in Ohio, putting those data up every week so people knew. But politicians got to know me because of that, and I guess now I'm a terrorist as well. But because of that, when Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania announced at the end of November, do you remember that? Doug Mastriano had a special hearing, and he announced that they were going to launch an investigation into their elections in Pennsylvania. Once he did that, I got a phone call from Kathy Barnett the next day. She was running in Montgomery County. She called me up and said, Dr. Frank, you're really good with numbers, would you look at my election for me? And so she sent me over the data, and I studied her election, and I found all kinds of very serious questions. So she introduced me to the 2 legislators who were leading the investigation in Pennsylvania. I showed them what I found. They invited me on a team of 6 people. These 6 people had access to anything we wanted. We were in an investigation led by the legislature. They had access to everything. It's the only full forensic audit in the country. The Maricopa audit wasn't even close. I was a peer reviewer on that before and after. It wasn't even close to a full forensic audit. We were denied what we needed. But in Pennsylvania, we had access to everything. So let me just tell you, I need to tell you 2 short stories because I will teach you so much with just these 2 short stories. So what happened was when I joined the team, there was somebody named Heather. She was going county by county and saying, how many people voted here? How many people voted here? How many people voted here? So she just added up one column, how many people voted in every county. And then she went back and said, how many ballots were counted here? How many ballots were counted here? So you have one column, how many people voted, and another column, how many ballots did they count? And what happened in Pennsylvania is they counted 765,000 more ballots than voters. 765,000 more ballots than voters. When you first hear that, I know when people hear that, they're like, huh, that can't be right, that's ridiculous. I agree, it sounds ridiculous. But remember when they arrested that Postal Service contractor who was driving 200,000 ballots from New York to Pennsylvania, and they caught him? That's 200,000 out of that 765. Now it doesn't sound quite so outlandish, does it? And that's only the one they caught. Well, you figure there's probably others, right? If they caught that one. So that should bring it into reality in your mind a little bit. The other example I want to give you is from Montgomery County, because it teaches you some things. I was in 2 of the 4 Supreme Court cases from Pennsylvania, and they were from Montgomery County. And so the lawyers asked me to focus on Montgomery County, so I did. And I noticed something, and I just want to walk you through this with me. So right before the election, about 6 weeks before the election in Montgomery County, their voter rolls suddenly surged by 50,000 voters. They grew by 50,000 voters in one afternoon in a county that has 500,000. So it's a 10% sudden surge, 500,000 to 550,000. That was surprising to me. I didn't expect that. But I figured, well, there's a possible explanation. The clerk just kind of let them all pile up and inserted them all at once or something like that. It's, after all, it's an election. Then I noticed that all of those 50,000 voted. Every one of them voted. And that was a little surprising to me. And then every one of them was removed from the rolls within 2 months after the election. So 50,000 people were added to the rolls, they all voted, and then they were all removed within 2 months. That was puzzling. I didn't understand that. So I asked the Secretary of State Bookvar, I said, because I had subpoena authority, why are you removing those people from the voter rolls? And her answer came back that very afternoon. She said, because they moved away. They were removed because they moved away. And that was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense to me. So I went back, I was surprised, and I started studying the rolls. I started studying each one of those people in the rolls. And sure enough, she was right. Every one of them had moved away 10 years earlier. So what was happening is somebody was using old copies of the rolls or old data sets and re-inflating the voter rolls with non-real voters, stuffing ballots for them, and then the state system that automatically cleans up the voter rolls when people moved away was cleaning them up afterwards. So that was a shock to me. So what's the next natural question? Well, who did that? We want to know who did that. Well, unlike Maricopa, we have access to anything we wanted. So we asked for 2 months of the centralized data rolls for the state, for the logs, for every entry in and out. And we downloaded that. It's a huge file, a mammoth file. And we put 6 volunteers to work on it, cyber experts. And they started combing through the rolls and looking for my 50,000. And they found it. It was on Tuesday afternoon, all at once. Boom, 4 different entries. Boom, 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 boom. Now, in cybercrime, you don't know who's on the other side of the keys. You just know the login credentials, the user ID, the password, and sometimes you know an IP. Well, in this case, the 50,000, we knew the user ID and password. And it turned out it was the Hillary Clinton campaign, which surprised me. I didn't understand. So I called Russ Simon and I said, I don't understand. Why does the Hillary Clinton campaign have access to your voter rolls? These are your state voter rolls. And he says, I know what that is. He sent me a newspaper clipping from 2015, which described how the state of Pennsylvania had hired the Hillary Clinton campaign to write an app that let people register people to vote at football games and college campuses and rock concerts and whatnot. And so and those credentials were still active, which gave anybody who had those credentials could go into the back of the database. They could change any field they wanted. They could add, remove, they could flip votes, they could do anything they wanted in the back. And it's like our team, somebody on the team said, well, who else has access to the voter rolls? So we put the 6 volunteers back to work. They scoured the rolls. We found 32, a minimum. I was just in Pennsylvania the other day, and Vico, who was there, who led that effort, he said, Dr. Frank, that's a minimum number. We found a minimum of 32 non-government organizations who had back-end access to the voter rolls. And all across the state, they were adding voters who had been removed formerly and stuffing ballots for them. And that's how you get up to 765,000. So I'm a scientist. So I always do another experiment. I never, okay, we got the evidence, but no, I always want to do one more experiment. During the time while they were doing the searching and whatnot, I was writing mathematical algorithms to help me search quickly through the voter rolls to find certain situations, and I was doing modeling. That's what we do in science. You observe a phenomenon and you write equations that model it. You make predictions and whatnot. So I told the people in Montgomery County, I said, pick 1,600 names. 1,600 names of 1,600 residences. Don't tell me how you pick them, just give me 1,600 residences. They gave them to me, I ran my algorithms on it, and I told them, when you start knocking on these doors, you're going to find 30% of the doors have a phantom voter back. What that means is somebody who voted, but they don't live there. So if somebody who's dead, if they voted, or somebody who lives in another state, but somebody cast a ballot in their name from that residence. So that's called a phantom voter. They're not a real voter, but you counted the ballot from them. That's how you get up to 765. So I ran my algorithm and told them, you're going to have about 30%. Well, the 100 volunteers knocked on 1,600 doors for 3 days. Guess what they found? 32% of the doors had phantom voters. So I knew I was on target. In fact, it was just in Coos County this morning. They told him, I didn't realize it, but a year and a half ago, I gave him a list. I didn't know I had. I had given him a list of doors to knock on. I gave him 17 doors, apparently, and they said, we went knocked on Dr. Frank, and 7 of the doors had a phantom voter at it. and so what?
7 out of the first 7. 7 out of 7.
7 of 7 of the doors that knocked in, okay, had a phantom voter at it. So it was, my algorithms were working. It was. I didn't remember doing that, but apparently this morning they told me, oh, Dr. Frank, you did what you told us, but they didn't know the next things to do. And the problem is that in those days, I was not thinking the right way either. I was thinking in those days that we were going to fix our elections from the top down. And so during 2021, mostly, I was meeting with secretaries of states and attorneys general, and I'm testifying before legislatures. I testified about 12 times before legislatures, thinking I could fix the country from the top down, and I could spend the whole night just telling you stories about secretaries of states, about how I would sit down with them, I would bring a white hat hacker with me, we would hack into every part of their election, right in front of their face. And we did that dozens of times, and you would think, if you showed them that their elections are not secure, they would want to fix them. And that was an eye-opener for me, because I didn't realize how corrupt we were. And they already know at the top, and they like it this way. They want to keep it this way. They're not going to fix it from the top down. I'm telling you, it's not going to work. What is working is the bottom-up strategy, which is why I'm standing here, which is why I met with your local grassroots people this morning, which is why I met with Pope last week. You see where I'm going. This is how we win right here. So I'm very excited. So anyway, let me finish this story. I got rambled a little bit there. This is important. So I'm a scientist. We've done the experiment that confirms what we found. We've got the evidence. We've got all the logs. We have everything we need. And I thought when we brought that as a team to these legislators that they would say, oh no, we made a huge error. We certified an election illegally, had 765,000 more ballots than voters, and here's the evidence that those were stuffed ballots, and this is a huge debacle. We need to decertify our elections. That's what I was expecting. Okay, you can laugh at me, okay? Because I was a rube. I'm a scientist. We scientists think if you have logic and evidence, people will do the right thing. Besides, they were a Republican majority. The Republican majority legislature, and Republicans are good, and Democrats are bad, and Republicans just lost the election with Trump. Don't the Republicans care? So I'm thinking in this mode, and that's very naive. Okay, but forget it. I was a scientist for 40 years, and writing any mathematical equation on the board, I can do that for you. And physics, I can derive all your stuff. But I'm not. They call it political science, but it ain't science. And for war, I kick butt on it. Politics is a whole different thing, and I kind of had to learn that. So I spent most of 2021 learning that we don't win that way. We don't win with evidence. Well, what happened was when the Supreme Court rejected I have to tell you one more story. I didn't finish that. 2 more aspects. I'm teaching you a lot here. So I was expecting them to say, oh no, our elections were botched, we got to decertify them and do a redo. They didn't. They said, oh no, our voter rolls are corrupt. We're going to replace our voter rolls. And they drained their state voter rolls. And they hired a firm to rebuild their voter rolls in time for the spring elections. They paid that firm $10 million on December 20th of 2020. And 3 days later, that firm was bought by Zuckerberg. And that's when my alarm went off. That's when my red flag went off, because of the 32 non-governmental organizations we found, number 1 manipulator was Hillary Clinton campaign. The number 2 manipulator was C2CL, the Center for Tech and Civic Life, Mr. Zuckerberg's organization. So that was like, they just put the fox right back in the hen house. They have no intention of fixing this. So I was very angry at that point. I felt duped and I was mad. So I didn't talk to him for about a week. Instead, I went and downloaded all the data from Florida, and downloaded all the data from North Carolina, and Ohio, and Colorado, because I could get those data sets. And I was testing my algorithms on those states. And what did I find? The exact same stuff going on in those states that was going on in Pennsylvania. I was shocked. Wait a minute, those are Republican states. Certainly their elections are good because they're Republican. Wrong. I had to go through the process of realizing, no, this R and D thing, Republican and Democrat, that is not what's going on. And I'll show you some stuff about that later. I know you're here in Oregon, and you're looking at your government and saying the reason it's bad is because of those Democrats. I don't think so. I think the reason you're in the mess you're in is because your own party, the Republican Party, is a disaster in this state, and your elections are a disaster in this state. It has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. To me, the two most corrupt states in the whole country are Alaska and Kentucky, and they're both red states. Okay, it's not about Republican and Democrat. It's about you locally controlling the elections or not. So I want to get you there. Anyway, so at the end of February, Patrick Barnett called me and said, I give up, the Supreme Court rejected my case, they're not going to fix my election. She said, but last week in CPAC, I met Mike Lindell, and he's all gung-ho about elections, so I'll introduce you to him. So she did, and I gave testimony for a bunch of attorneys, and then I was invited down to Memphis. I'm going to tell this story quickly, and Mr. Lindell made a movie about me. It's called Scientific Proof. It's an hour long. He basically used my evidence, the mathematical evidence, which confirms his electronic evidence. Basically, I proved that the elections can't be real. It's like absolutely impossible. Any mathematician that looks at my work, they go, that's impossible. I say, yep, you're right, it's impossible. So the elections can't be real. And in those days, I was thinking I could win with the evidence. So we were focusing on that. In my time, it's the first time I met him in March 2021. We were in studio for 3.5 hours. And 3.5 hours with Mike is a long time. He's a sweetheart. I throw myself on the sword for that guy. I love him. He's a wonderful man, but boy, is he hard. And, I'm a teacher, and I was explaining my work to him, and I would show him a graph or something, and he'd go, oh, but that means, because he's very smart, but he gets very excited, oh, but that means this, and he'd go off on a 15-minute rant, and he'd tell the American public what it meant, and then I'd kind of rope him back in, as a teacher, get him back on track, and then I would explain something next thing, oh, that means listen to me, people, and he would get going, it was a lot of work for 3.5 hours. And I was tired by the end. And I remember I was showing him some graphs from Ohio, and I said, see how this red graph looks a lot like that black graph? I said, that ain't natural, buddy. And instead of giving technical definitions, I was just tired. So I said, that ain't natural, buddy. And I said that, and now all around the country, everybody comes up and says, that ain't natural, buddy. It's like it turned out to be an excellent way to think of things. Remember election night in 2020? You were looking at the TV, and you went, something's wrong with this. That ain't natural. There's something wrong with this. Y'all knew something was wrong, but you weren't sure what it was. We were all like that. It ain't natural. There's something wrong with that. Well, anyway, I'm not going to give you any big math equations, I promise. I'm going to keep it really simple. And when I have to explain something, I'm just going to say, that ain't natural. And make it easy on you. Okay, we're having fun time. All right, my first movie was Absolute Proof. That's where he showed that he had recordings of every county in the country of the elections taking place. He has recordings of your tabulators online during the election, reporting the numbers, basically giving the numbers away to the bad guys during the election. And then he has his third movie was Absolute Interference, and that's an important movie. He just was covering more data. In those days, he was thinking we could save the country with evidence. So was I. And then he made this movie Absolutely 9-0 because he was absolutely convinced that once the Supreme Court saw our evidence, it would be absolutely 9-0, and we'd have our country back, and Trump would be back in office by August. He was running around telling everybody that. Remember that? So it just shows how naive we were, because we all thought we would win with the evidence. You don't win with the evidence. I'm telling you, it doesn't work. You need a movie. But anyway, we didn't know that at that time, and so I like what Patrick Byrne, I was with him a couple months ago, he says, Dr. Frank reverse engineered the algorithms that are used to cheat our elections. And he's right. That's exactly what I did. I used physics and inference and mathematics, and I reverse engineered the election. I know how they're cheating. That's what Mike was so excited about it. But he also said, there are a dozen tools in their cheating toolbox, and they use whichever combination of tools works best in each situation. And So I see over and over again people are, we want all paper ballots, Dr. Frank. Many of the states I go to, they have all electronic machines. They don't even vote on a paper ballot. And they say, we want paper ballots. That'll fix the problem. Wait a minute. You're in Oregon. You all have paper ballots. Is that fixing the problem?
No.
They don't even know. Okay? Or we got to get rid of machines. That'll fix the problem. No. There are all these different things. There are 12 different tools, ways to cheat your election. And if you don't take them all out, if you don't block every one of them, your election's going to be cheated. And I use the metaphor, it's like you go to the doctor and he says, you have a dozen tumors. And the doctor says, well, we're only going to get 6 of them out. Well, then you're dead. You have to plug all the holes. You have to take out all the tumors or you don't win. And in your elections, the only way to do that is to take them back under local control. As long as you've got somebody else tinkering in your kitchen, the soup's not going to come out right. It needs to be just you in your own kitchen. All right. Next big thing happened to me. I'm taking you through a process here. I was still believing that this time I could save the world with evidence and that. So President Trump asked me to be his keynote speaker for his first rally after he was out of office. It was in Wellington, Ohio. And I was very, very honored that he asked me. He says, I want you to explain to the world how they stole my election. So I worked really hard. I prepared a presentation. It was his first big rally, and 21,000 people standing in a field for 6 hours in 80-degree weather. It was a hot day. They were drinking beer all day and listening to rock and roll at a Trump rally. And you know that's a pretty rowdy situation. And so I remember walking up to the microphone and looking out at the audience and thinking to myself, I just wasted a whole week of my life because I'm going to try to teach these people mathematics. But I have to tell you, I got going, and about halfway in the presentation, it was eerily quiet. I just gave one of these presentations in Michigan last month, and somebody raised their hand and said, Dr. Frank, I was there. It was so strange. 21,000 people were completely silent. It was eerie. It was very strange. I had one eat out of the palm of my hand. It was probably the best math class of my life. Every graph I showed it, you could hear a and it was amazing. And the next thing they made memes about me. It was incredible. The good thing about this is that I was getting through and people were understanding what I was doing. The bad thing about this is that I still believe in math. And we could win with math. And so I was going around the country teaching everybody the math. This happens in Indy and Mesa County, where I red-pilled Tina Peters. By the way we did that is we canvassed, we found actual fraud, and we showed it to her, and then she said, oh, what do we do now, Dr. Frank? I said, let's get some backups of your systems. And by the way, this next month she's in court, federal court, for that. I mean, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time there. So we had forensic images of her machines showing them communicating online in real time during the elections, etc. It's a long story, I won't get into that. But I was going around the country teaching everybody, and so I was gaining notoriety. Everywhere I went, they were writing hit pieces on me. New Yorker did this. This is what they interpret my mathematics. It's very, very compelling, isn't it? And mathematics works for a very small segment of the population. I show it to them, and they're like, boom, that's it. Yes, it works for you. It works for you. I'm telling you, it's like, it's over. They don't even like, they're automatically on board. But most people don't get it, so it doesn't work. Mike was still, in August of 2021, he was still showing everybody his electronic evidence, thinking we could win that way. But you can see our growth. A year later, Mike was focusing on the machines and getting people in their own communities to try to get rid of the machines. You can see him moving towards the people. And then by the last year, in the summer, he had the Election Crime Bureau Summit, where he was basically providing tools for all around the country for grassroots people to engage this movement. So you can see his process of growth, and I was right alongside him. I'm maybe a little ahead of him because I'm doing this every day, and he's running a business too. But nevertheless, that was a big event. If you haven't seen that stuff and you want to catch up, you can watch it on frankspeech.com and franksocial.com to keep up on stuff. He announced that he was broke at that event. I was surprised. I knew he was. When I first met him, he told me in March of 2021, he said, I have $35 million in the bank, and I'm going to spend it all on election integrity. He says, they either spend it now or they take it away from me later anyway. And I was inspiring to me. And there were people going around grifting this all around the country. And so I said, he inspired me. I said, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to charge for any of my work. I've never charged for any of my work, which is why I passed the hat, help pay for the tickets. But it's not enough, it's fine. If it's more than enough, fine. It seems to be working out. It's like I'm breaking even, which is what I need to do. Break even right. So anyway, I followed that. But Mr. Liddell said, I said, how can I help you, Mike? He said, tell everybody to go to mypillow.com and buy slippers and pillows and things. He says, or donate to the Liddell Office Fund. And she says, and make sure to tell everybody to use the Dr. Frank promo code. I said, I don't have a Dr. Frank promo code, Mike. I don't use it. I'm not doing this for money. And he says, you got one now. You know, Mike doesn't have a computer. He manages his business with promo codes on his phone. That's how he manages my pillow. And so what happened was I started using the code, and he knows where I am all the day, anywhere I am around the country. But I got even with him. I set it up so that if you use this code, my 25% commission automatically goes to the offense fund. So if you want to help Mike, that's a good code to use, isn't it? Because more of the money is going to him. So please do that. But my ulterior motive is I like it when he sends me texts and says, gee, you're in Alaska today. You get everywhere. It's fun. So it's kind of a fun game too. He wants you to sign up in Frank Social. That's a big deal. That's how we're communicating and connecting to grassroots. They're working on a new webpage for me there as well to help me get the word out. And he wants you to sign this petition while you're there. We're basically trying to get everybody to return to hand-counted paper ballots. That's where we're headed. So also the other way to help them is to go to my pillow and buy stuff. I promise he's the real deal. This is how you get it done. I have to wait for that second wave of laughter. If that doesn't convince you Mike is the real deal, this will. All right. So,
Is that the soft landing they were talking about?
all right. So what did I just do? I just brought you through 3 years. I convinced you that the evidence is not. We're not going to win with the evidence. You're not going to win with lawsuits. I haven't really done that too much, although I talked about the civil case. You're not going to win with legislation. And you can see that the whole movement across the whole country is moving away from top-down solutions to the grassroots level. And that is where the solutions are. If you're looking for a lawsuit to save you, you're going to be waiting a long time. You're waiting for legislation to save you. You're waiting for a long time. So the problem. What's the problem? Let's dive into that now. So the problem is that it's not just Oregon. In every state in America, and I mean every state, elections are now centrally controlled by the state. Let me give you 2 examples, and then we'll dive into Oregon after that. But these are very illustrative examples that teach you other things as well. So I've spoken to a lot of private meetings, and I got to speak with Speaker Voss. He's the Speaker of the House of Wisconsin. And at the meeting, a local citizen set it up. It was me, Sean Smith. I mentioned Sean earlier, retired colonel from the Air Force, and John Eastman. I noticed the Epic Times article had John Eastman. He and I have done a lot of work together. He was President Trump's constitutional expert. So the 3 of us teamed up on Robin Voss for an hour and a half in a secret meeting. And the idea was Sean would show him how hackable the elections were. I would summarize all the fraud that we found so far. And then John Eastman would say, now that you know that your elections are not secure and you have all this fraud, here's the authority you have as Speaker of the House, and here's the legislative powers you have. This is what you need to do. That was the purpose. We had that meeting. Sean did great. About halfway through my talk, Speaker Voss interrupted. He said, Dr. Frank, I just don't believe you have as much fraud as you said. I said, why did you say that? He says, well, because we've done recounts in our 3 largest counties. And all the recounts came out right. And I said, sir, it doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register. What matters is how many of the bills are counterfeit. You can just see his eyes get big. He's like, oh yeah. It doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register. What matters is how many of the bills are counterfeit. It doesn't matter how many times you count those 200,000 ballots that were driven down from New York to Pennsylvania. What matters is they're not from the voters in the voter rolls, they're from somebody else. And that's the situation you're in Oregon. You mail ballots to every active voter in your rolls. You mail ballots to every active voter in your rolls, and your rolls are full of active voters who are not real voters. You are essentially littering the pavement in your state with ballots that anybody can scrape up and cast. and you're giving away your elections that way. You have to quit doing that. You have to take that problem back. Well, anyway, at the end of that meeting, Speaker Voss walked out of the meeting, and there were 10 television stations waiting for him. So normally when I have private meetings, I don't tell you about them, right? So otherwise I don't get private meetings. But there were 10 television stations that cornered him against the wall. It was beautiful. Peppered him with questions, and he admitted to the whole world that there's widespread fraud in Wisconsin, more than the margins of the elections. Did you hear about that? Yeah. You heard about it? Most people don't hear about it because they're listening to the wrong news. The right news to listen to is the Lindell Report. If you want to know about elections, this is where it's happening, because all of us grassroots people are channeling all the information through Mike. We're letting them know. It's weeknights. It used to be weeknight 6 Central. Now it's weeknight 7 Central, and it's an hour-long program. And you don't have to listen to a whole hour of Mike. That's a lot. But you can catch the first 10 minutes, and you'll know what's going on. And if there's something interesting, you can listen to the rest. It's sort of like a Rush Limbaugh. You didn't need to listen to the whole 3 hours. You would just catch 10 minutes now and then, and you would know what's going on. Well, same with Mike. Well, here I'm starting to show you David now. Don't panic. Just take a deep breath. It's all right. I'm going to make you. So I testified before the Wisconsin legislature at that time. I was with Voss. And what I did is, from 2009 all the way to December of 2021, I went to every county and I downloaded their voter records. So month by month, how many people were in the voting rolls in their 3 largest counties. And I noticed that there's an interesting pattern in every one of the counties. So I showed it to Speaker Voss. I said, notice right before the election in 2012, the voter rolls suddenly surged in these 3 large counties. Does this sound familiar? It suddenly surged. It was like my Pennsylvania story, right? And the people voted and then you took them out. And then right before the midterm, not so severe, but the same phenomenon. And then right before the 2016 election, you fill the rolls right back up again. And then after the election, you remove 25% of the voters from your voter rolls in these 3 largest counties. And by 2020, they're all back again. I said, this is ridiculous. This is a lot of turnover. How do you explain this? And he said, Speaker Voss said, oh, those 3 counties, they have a lot of turnover. A lot of turnover. 25% in 4 years, that seems like a lot to me. I said, besides, let's look at all of your counties. That ain't natural. That ain't natural. And what happened was this made the cover of all the newspapers. I testified before their legislature. They were being told, we can't have widespread fraud in Wisconsin because every county runs their own election. Does this look to you like every county is running its own election? No, this is central control. Every county can have all the same little bumps and wiggles. That's crazy. That cannot be real. You know, we could have a statistical argument, but we don't need it. We can just say, that ain't natural. That ain't natural. Okay. All right. Now, what I want you to do is I'm going to show you one more example like this, because most people don't think this way. I'm going to try to change your mind. Wyoming is the most conservative state in the country. 8 out of 9 people there are registered Republicans, and they voted 3-1 for Trump, more than any other state in the country. Wyoming is by far the most conservative in the country. Well, here are their 3 largest counties. Okay, from 2008 to here. And when I was touring in January of 2023, I was touring the state and showing this to the county clerks. Their mouths fell open. They had no idea this was happening to them. And that's just the 3 largest. Once again, I can show you all the counties. Isn't it interesting that all the counties have the same pattern in the same way? You can zoom in. I'm zooming in really tight so you can see some variations. But on average, it's 20 to 25% variation every 2 years. That's twice as fast as Wisconsin. So this is the most conservative state in the country, and that's their situation. And while I'm on with Wyoming, I just want to show you one more thing, because this is their general session last year, how their legislature voted. So each one of these dots represents one of their legislators. This red dot here, this is their most conservative legislator. His name, he's a King James Republican, I call him. He's the most conservative, this is the most liberal. And so what happens is that in their legislative session, this is how they voted. These 26 Republicans, they call themselves the Freedom Caucus there. They voted pretty consistently with the most conservative one. But these 26 Republicans voted consistently with these 6 Democrats. And so people are like, wait a minute, that's the most conservative state in the country. How did they get 26 Republicans like that? And the answer is, you can't get elected in that state with a D in front of your name because everybody's a registered Republican. So if you're a left-leaning person, you put an R in front of your name, you convince the voters that you're a conservative, they elect you in, and then you act like the 6 liberal Democrats from the 6 big cities. So that's the most conservative legislature in the country. So are we expecting to have legislative reform? No. See the problem we're in? I just need to make that point. Now, I need to show you one more example because this is close to your situation. This is Kentucky. In Kentucky, this is from 2017 to present, the number of voting age people in Kentucky. You notice the population is kind of steadily climbing. Here's the number of people in their voter rolls over that time. And I'm going to zoom in on that a little bit and talk about it. So this is the 18 and older population. Here's the number of votes in their voter rolls, and you notice that it's growing faster than the population. In fact, it went right past the population in 2020. Okay? And there are 8 states like that. 8 states in America, and you're one of them. And your population, your voter rolls went right past your population. Okay? You're one of the worst in the country. This is why I'm bringing this up and showing you this. And what happened was Judicial Watch sued them. And they're about to sue you. You just got official notice from Judicial Watch that they're about to sue you. Because your voter rolls are so dirty, and you're not complying with HAVA, Help America Vote Act, and you're not complying with NVRA, the National Voter Registration Act. Your state is not complying, which is why your rolls are so filthy dirty. And if everybody was honest, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter because you'd have all these extra ballots floating around, people just throw them away. But no, it matters because there are a lot of people that are not honest, and there are a lot of people harvesting those ballots. They're worth about $50 a piece. So it's cheaper to buy ballots than it is to campaign.
Say that again?
Say that again. It's cheaper to buy ballots than it is to campaign. They're only $50 a piece. You want to win your election, you only need a few hundred ballots, spend $15,000. And instead of money on campaign, those are guaranteed votes in your favor that way. That's happening to you in this county. And that's, remember all that money that poured into your county in the recent elections to take over your school boards, I just learned. Okay? That's how. People are buying those school boards. By the way, where's that money coming from? Anybody know? You know. Good for you. It's interesting, in 2006, I'm a little off my slides, but this is important. In 2006, Soros announced on TV, you can look it up, the Secretary of State project. And he said on TV, I'm going to own every Secretary of State by 2020. That's what he said. And that went so quickly, so fast, that he then started the Attorney General's project. And he started going around the country, buying up all the Attorneys General. And now he's made it public. He's after the sheriffs and the school boards. He's doing that all over the country, buying those elections. And what's happening is he's just ratcheting in a world philosophy that does not match our world philosophy, and he's taking away, and they are taking, the world is basically taking our country away from us, systematically. But this is another good example of why I don't like lawsuits, because basically Judicial Watch sued them, they had to clean the vote rolls, and then ACLU countersued, they put the people right back in again. You don't win anything even when you win lawsuits. And it's not just one county. All the red is all the counties that were over. Remember I told you don't bother cleaning the voter rolls. Judicial Watch sued Los Angeles County, and last year they won the case in February. Judicial Watch and the Election Integrity Project in California sued. They won the lawsuit. LA was required to remove 1.2 million people from their voter rolls out of 5.3. I mean, it's like 1 in 4. And that's a minimum. I think it's probably twice that they needed to remove, but that's a minimum required according to federal standards. Well, within 2 weeks, their voter rolls were completely full again with new, non-real voters, new voters. So in the Kentucky example, they took a bunch out and put the same ones back in. But in this example, they took a bunch out and they put in new ones. 1.2 million new ones. There's an algorithm controlling that, keeping the voter rolls full. And if you watch that movie Scientific Proof, I talk about how they use the census to keep the rolls full. There's a simple algorithm that does that. But anyway, that's why I say don't bother cleaning the voter rolls. That's like cleaning your kid's room. Because you spend all day cleaning it, and then you put the kid back in, and it only takes a minute to make it a mess again. It's the same with the rolls. They did all that work to sue Los Angeles to clean the voter rolls, and it's just dirty again anyway. It's not a good use of your time. Of course, how is all this manipulation possible? Of course, it's because it's a machine, stupid. But what do I mean by machines? Well, it's not just the thing you put your ballot that they're putting your ballots through. It's also how the registration systems. How do people register to vote? How do they maintain the rolls? How do they send out ballots? How do they receive ballots? How do they process ballots? All these systems are all networked and connected through networks, and no one denies that. Everybody admits all those systems are computer integrated. The only argument is about whether the tabulators are online or not, and I can prove the tabulators are on. As I just showed here, OAG admits that the tabulators are. So the thing is, we could spend a whole hour or two talking about all this. I think it's a waste of time. I think the solution is you need to get rid of all of that. You need to go back to doing it the way we used to do when we had paper poll books and paper ballots, and you showed up on election day and you voted in person after you showed your license. I'm old enough to remember that. I remember my mom taking me by the hand and taking me down to the corner garage in the neighborhood, and everybody voted. And they counted the ballots right then at the end of the day, and we all turned in the tallies, and everything was transparent and auditable, and anybody could examine any part of the election if they had any doubts about it. Right now, you are denied access to almost every aspect, and your own clerk can't even audit her own election. Her own numbers don't even reconcile, and she has no way to make sure. So that's crazy. We need to get rid of all of this. We need to do what I say, vote Amish. We need to vote Amish. And I got this idea because in Ohio, in 2020, DeWine's COVID restrictions on the Amish community were getting worse and worse, and so they woke up, right? The pain level got high, so they woke up. And they turned out 60,000 Amish people came out to vote for the first time in Ohio in 2020 because of the COVID restrictions. And they woke up, and that's what gave me the idea of vote Amish, because they all came out on election day, and they voted in person on paper. And that's what we need. That's called voting Amish. And I always bring up my daughter at this point. I have 3 kids. My oldest daughter, Nellie, has Down syndrome. So she's handicapped legally, right? And so when you say we're not going to allow the people to use machines, the clerks will often say, we have to have machines for handicapped people. They'll tell you that. You don't have that problem here because you take all the ballots down to a local central count anyway. But in most states, they say you can't get rid of machines because handicapped people need them. Well, Nellie votes just fine, and I always tell people she loves politicians. She doesn't know better. And so she goes in and she'll vote. She fills in the bubbles for the ones she loves. We just have one problem, and that's that it's not a private ballot. Because when she goes into the ballot box and starts filling out, she's like, "Oh, I love Joe! I love John!" And she's announcing to the whole room. She's so proud that she's voting. She knows exactly what she's doing. Beautiful, beautiful thing. And when we did that in the 22 primary, I was looking around the room, and there were just 50 people in there with big goofy grins on their face. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, right? And that's how we should be voting. We should be hanging out together on election day and celebrating our liberty and voting together in person on election day. And that's how you make sure every ballot is from who you think it's from. And if you want to have it, gunny sack races and apple pie and baseball, I don't know, maybe fireworks that night. We need to celebrate our liberty. That's the way we should be voting. We should celebrate that day. The Amish all turned out. I told you about that. So, by the way, when they say, "Oh, it's not feasible," Dr. Frank, yes, it is. All of Europe does it that way. They turn out on one day. They have paper poll books, paper ballots. Everything's transparent. The local people run their own local election. They count their own tallies, their own ballots. They turn it all in. Everything's auditable. Everything's transparent. Guess what? They trust their elections because they run their elections. And the biggest problem we're up against is that our people don't trust our elections anymore. For reasonable reasons. I mean, you're denied access to everything. So of course you don't trust it. So this is how I think you should be counting your ballots. I'm going to show you, this is how I think you should do it. We call it the Cajun clothesline. We spent $47 at the hardware store. This is high-tech equipment. we bought 100 clothespins, and what happened is your county clerk, she would load the ballot on there, and then the citizens would tally the votes. In this case, this was a 12-issue ballot, and we set it up so that every issue was triple counted on this side, and every issue was double counted on the back. One Republican, one Democrat, or 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. And so after 100 ballots go by, and everybody compares tally sheets, if the tally sheets agree, they would rubber band the tally sheets and do the next 100. And it was a really sophisticated counting system. They knew when they had reached 100 because they ran out of clothespins. And so they would take the bucket of clothespins back and do the next 100. I mean, how hard is that? Any high school kid can do this, and we all could watch it happening. I love this method because this is a spectacle. The people can watch their neighbors tallying the counts of the ballots and tallying the votes. So even if it doesn't solve these may still be fraudulent ballots, but it solves the confidence in the counting part of our election. The people can see it. If you want, you can put a camera here, a camera there, and people can keep their own tallies at home. They can watch, they can speak streaming at home, and they can watch the election. So they would restore trust in the elections. That's the way I think we should be voting and counting. But my favorite thing about it is that it's all online. Okay, are you ready for some data?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I've told you what the problem is. The problem is you're out of control of your own elections. Let me just show you that you are out of control of your own elections. I have some new stuff for you, Oregon. Okay. All right, so here are your this is the number of people in your voter rolls for your whole state since 1960. And I got all these data from your former Secretary of State. You got rid of her? Yes. But anyway, right off the Secretary of State website. And you notice there's some interesting shapes to this. There's a couple of clear differences in different places. Well, guess what? 1993, that's when NVRA was. That's when the National Voter Registration Act happened. That's when the federal government started giving states money to start inflating the voter rolls. And you can see the effect. See that effect all across the country. And then there's an interesting, notice how something got more wiggly here. That's right when you added machines. Why should machines affect how many ballots turned in and stuff? That's pretty interesting. Anyway, here in 2014, this is when you added motor voter. So you started automatically registering people to vote when they went and got a driver's license, automatically registering to vote when they got a car registration or social services of any kind. So that just started shooting up. So you can see some clear transitions. This is just how many people in your voter rolls for your whole state. This is how many people voted in every one of those elections. And you can see the clear transitions. This is NVRA. Look, your turnout suddenly jumped when you switch to electronic counting. That's very interesting. And this is also interesting. In 2018, you had a huge turnout in your midterm. Why would you have such a large turnout in 2018? When I ask that question, people usually have an answer. They say, oh yeah, we heard that such and such issue brought out a big turnout that year. And that's the kind of propaganda that people buy. But guess what? That's in every state in America. A huge surge in 2018. And I prefer Kessel's explanation. He says that's them getting us ready for what they were about to do us in 2020. So that's a ridiculous turnout. And you notice the problem didn't get fixed. You still have it. Your midterms are even right up to the 2016 election. It's crazy. And that's the whole state. Here's your 18 and older population for the whole state. And you notice, and these are just the official numbers of the elections you actually have passed, which is why you had more people in the voter rolls than you had people for a while there. But these are the official numbers for the election, not for in between. So let's see what else I got here. It's not there. There we go. What's going on here? Oh, so you notice that the voter rolls were growing faster than the population, right? And that's happening in every state. If I show you the trend, if I just show the trend of the voter rolls, you notice that the population doesn't justify that. That's something else. And if I do a simple calculation, you have about 640,000 more people in the rolls than you justify by the trend, and that's about 1 in 4. So you got about 1 in 4 people more in your voter rolls than you would have just by a normal population trend. So that's very suspicious. But look at something else interesting about this. If they hadn't inflated the voter rolls with a whole bunch of new people that aren't real voters, guess what? You would have 100% turnout. You can't have 100% turnout. No one would believe that. So they have to inflate the voter rolls to disguise the fact that you're stuffing all those ballots. See how that works? Okay. Yamhill. So it looks like your population's flattened out for about 5 years, maybe 6 years, something like that. Does that match your guys' local understanding? Back from the census and from your tax records. So that's your population's growth here. Here's the number of people in your voter rolls. And you notice you have the same inflection point in your voter rolls as well. You did not escape the tyranny of the state. Here's the number of people who voted in each of your elections. And you notice you have the same discontinuity as the rest of the state does. You have the same ridiculous turnout there. You have the same ridiculous turnout there. And you have the same situation where your rolls are growing faster than your population. And if they hadn't inflated, oh, by the way, I zoomed in on this. You see this gray curve? This is month to month how many people are in your voter rolls. I went month to month, went to your county website, downloaded every month so I could see. I wanted to see this gray curve. So in other words, these are election to election. This is month to month since 2014. And you can see your voter rolls shot up all of a sudden. That ain't natural, buddy. Somebody pumped your rolls full of a lot of voters in a very short amount of time. They basically gave themselves a huge credit line right before the 2016 election. I wonder why they would do that. Can't imagine. Okay. I just want you to see very quickly that every state, every county in the state has the same situation. That's a very fast way to show you 36 counties. Here's another way to show you. And notice you have the same situation. If your rolls had just tracked your population, you would have more voters than you wouldn't have enough. Yes?
Could you show Lincoln County for us? Take a picture of that.
Yes. Wait till the questions.
Okay.
Because that's a movie and it's screaming fast movie. I don't know if I'm going to have to hit the pause button fast. Does this make sense?
Makes more sense.
Yeah, and so when we're done, I'll bring that up for you. And in any county you want, because I've got them all. By the way, I'm going to put all these graphs on my Rumble channel when I leave Oregon. I said Ohio, sorry. I've been on the road for 3 weeks, man. Come on. And I get to go home. I get to go home on Thursday after 3 weeks on the road, and man, am I looking forward to some time off. The first thing I like doing is mow the lawn. and then change the light bulbs, and my daughter takes me around the house and show me all the light bulbs that are out. It's pretty fun. So, and then we snuggle and watch Gunsmoke together and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to my time off. But in 3 weeks, I'm not a military guy, but I tell you, I have a new appreciation for people that have spent a year overseas on tours and things like that away from their family. Anyway, I'm rambling now. So I will show you, but the reason I mention that is all these graphs are going to be on my Rumble channel. You can have it all. Any one you want, and I play them slow. So you can easily pause and make a screenshot and give it whatever you want. All right. Yeah, now what I can do is this is for every election, how many people were registered to vote for every county. You can see the big counties, it's hard to see the small counties. So what I'm going to do, I showed you in a fast way, now I'm going to just show them all at the same time on the same scale, on 100% scale. And you'll notice your rolls used to be random in your state, but suddenly, look after NVRA, they started syncing up. And then after you added electronic systems, they really started syncing up, and then you added motor voter, and now all of them. And so this is not natural. This is not individuals in every county doing this. This is state central control of your voter rolls. That's brutally obvious from that. You can see what it used to be managed by your local clerks versus now. It's a huge difference. You can see that. We need to undo that. We need your local clerk in charge of your voter rolls. That's what we need. All right. Now, I told you I went month by month for every county. This is a lot of work. Since 2014 to 2024, every county in your state, month to month, you can already see some interesting features. But I'm going to put them all on the same scale so you can look at them all at the same time. And you'll notice that in 2016, all of them have that surge right before the election. And then all your counties are growing. And it looks like Wheeler had a little correction. But Wheeler's a tiny little county, right? There's a few people left who says, it's a tiny little county. And my guess is there's a clerk on the ball there who's cleaning her voter rolls because it's a small county and she can't. You're looking, you said something.
Oh, I called her.
Oh, yeah, you called her, what'd she say?
Well, she just said a lot of people died. I don't know.
That's a lot of people who died.
I don't know if she did. I sent her.
She probably doesn't know better.
It was the pandemic.
Yeah, but anyway, she's doing something right. But it's just a small town. You know, in a big county, or when you're dealing with big numbers, it's hard to police every one of the names, isn't it? So you get the idea. This is the turnout for every election since 1980. So how many people voted in every election? And so when I put it on the same scale, your turnouts used to be random. Once you got electronic machines, they started syncing up. And as you added voters, putting more voters in, now you're in perfect sync. And this goes back to the scientific proof movie that I did with Mr. Lindell. What happens is all I have to do is study one county in a state, and I can predict all the others. Why is that? Because they're all in sync. If they weren't all in sync, it wouldn't work. But the fact is, and what I notice is that when I predict every county in your state, if I go to another state, it doesn't work. I have to study one county there, and then I can predict all of them that. And I go to another state, and I study one state county, and I can predict all of it. So it works that. That's how I proved early on that these were state-controlled elections. All right, here's another way to show you the data. This is going to freak you out a little bit. Most people have never seen these kind of graphs. Your clerks don't have any idea how to approach it. What this is for the 2020 election in Coos County. This blue curve is how many people you have of each age. So here's 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds, all the way up to 110 years old. So this is how many people. It looks like you have about 800 people that are 25. Looks like you have about 1,100 people that are 65. So you're mostly an older people. You're not. This is Coos. This is not you. Sorry. There you go.
Never mind.
Okay. Let's do Yamhill.
Okay.
Sorry, these are the 4 counties that I'm going to these days. So here's your population. It looks like you have a lot of young people. Do you have school here? College or something? Yeah. Did you notice that? When you don't have a college, it's the younger population is there. So I can tell you have a college. Anyway, so here's the number of people that you have by age. Looks like it's pretty common to have some, actually it's pretty even, and then you got to start shifting the voter rolls. So it's like you got 1,400 people of every age, it looks like, round numbers. But then people start to pass away. So that's your voter rolls. I mean, that's your population. Now, this gray line is the number of people in your voter rolls, including your inactives, voters. So you'll notice you probably had a bunch of college students that moved away, but they're still in the rolls. And that's why that's like that. And then, but notice over here, your inactives are right past your population even. But the black curve is how many people are considered active voters in your election. Notice every person above 65 in your county is registered and considered an active voter. Every person is considered an active voter. But if you've knocked on any doors before, you know there are a lot of people that are not registered. Well, then why is every person registered numerically? Because you know those aren't real voters. Your rolls are inflated. They're dirty. You've got a bunch of active voters who you're mailing ballots to who are obviously not real voters. But this should be particularly alarming. I showed you the population, showed you the active voters, the black curve. The red curve is who voted by age. And if you notice, everybody above age 70 voted in your county. Every person you have. That doesn't make sense, does it? That's very suspicious, and that's basically ballot harvesting. Somebody's out there scraping up all these ballots from that are from people who are in dirty voter rolls and not real voters. They're scraping those up. They're $50 a piece, and they're stuffing them. That's like brutally obvious. But now look at the black curve, and and then look at the red curve. Do you notice any similarity between those two? Don't they look awfully similar? That ain't natural, buddy, okay? Because what happens is if you take the ratio between registered voters, black curve, and who voted, the red curve, I do that by age, and I make an assumption. And the assumption I make is I say, what if in every county in Oregon, they all vote in that exact proportion in every county? What if I make that assumption? Well, you see that light blue curve? That is my prediction of who turned out in your election. If I assume that every county votes exactly in the same proportion by age. Why would they do that? You got big urban city ones, you've got rural farm communities, you've got black communities, green communities, Chinese communities, you've got all kinds of different communities, but they all vote in the exact same proportion by age. How do you know? Guess what? Oh, I can talk about this number. This number is the correlation coefficient. This tells you how good of a correlation it is between the red curve and my prediction. So here's Columbia. Notice that they're all, you just see, look at the two curves. They're all the same in every county. I already showed you Yamhill. Here's Goose. And notice these ridiculous correlation coefficients. It's preposterous. So your elections are being manipulated here. And all I have to do is go to one county and I can predict all the others. So I just showed you Columbia, Yamhill, I guess Polk as well. Notice that everybody has the same problem. Every county has the same problem. That's how they're harvesting those dogs all across the state. Your elections are correct. Okay. One more thing I want to show you before I dive into the solution, because this is new and you guys haven't seen it yet. So I've been calculating churn. I've almost got it done. What is churn? So what churn is, say that a county has 100 residents. Here they are, 100 residents. And let's say 10 of them move away and 10 move in. Well, you've made 20 changes to the rolls. You took out 10, you put in 10. That was what we call that a 20% churn. 20% churn of your rolls. Make sense? Well, what I did is I did the churn for the entire state of Nebraska. And I discovered that the churn was the same in every county. But even worse, the same number of people who voted in the 2020 election were removed. And it was about 12.6. So in other words, somebody who voted in 2020 has been removed from the rolls within 3 years. This was over a 3-year period of time. And it's the same in every county. And people are like, what? How can that be? And so when I talked to the clerks, they would say things to me like, oh, Dr. Fantastic, we have a lot of students moving around. We have a lot of churn. So what did I do? I did it by demographics. I showed you who they added by age and who they removed by age. No, it's all ages. It's not any particular group. They are churning the roll. But guess what? They're not removing inactive voters. They're removing active voters, which means somebody who voted. What did I just tell you about Pennsylvania? They add a bunch of voters to the rolls who vote, and then they take them out. Those would be active voters they're removing. See how that works? So, and I'm going to show you. So I did Coos County, but I'm going to skip this. Hope this is coming out. Yeah, here's Yamhill County. So what I did is I took snapshots of the voter rolls. January 21, January 22, January 23, and March of 2024. So it's about a 3-year period of time, and I got 4 snapshots of the voter rolls in this county. What I typically do is I'll go up to a county clerk and I'll say, gee, you clean your voter rolls? And they'll always say, oh yes. And we work hard at it. We spend a lot of time cleaning the voter rolls. And I'll say, how many do you add and remove every year? And they'll give me a number, and it's typically a percent or 2 of their rolls. But this is what's actually happening in your rolls. I have 4 snapshots of your rolls in Yamhill. So in January 21, you had 82,715 registered voters in your county. 73,000 of them were considered active and 9,000 were considered inactive. So that was what your rolls looked like then. From January 21 to January 22, you removed 4,400 of your voters and added 6,800. The ones you removed, 3,800 of them were active and 565 were inactive. You're removing 8 times more active voters than inactive voters. And then you're adding in active voters, and and some inactives, and so you have a new number, and same thing happens again. Notice, you're removing the same number and adding about the same number, and look at these percentages. You're removing 4.8, adding 4.2, removing 5.4, adding 4.3, removing 5.3 the next year, adding 4.0. That's churn. So guess what? Since January of 21, which is right after the 2020 election, you have a 43% churn. That means 2 out of 5 records in your roles have changed in the last 3 years. 40% of your roles have changed. Has your population changed by 40% in the last 3 years? It's been, and so this is not your clerk doing this. This is a state system that's churning your rolls, and they're mostly taking out people who are voted. Ding, 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 ding. Because if you ask the Secretary of State, they'll say, oh yes, we clean up the voter rolls. We take out the inactive voters. We take out the dead voters. No, they're removing more active voters than anything else. And that churn is 43%. And in Yamhill, the official Secretary of State number for 2020 was 60,000. But even by January of 21, they were already down 93. So they were missing 93 voters in the rolls. So it's essentially 100%. But a year later, they'd already taken 5% of the people who voted out of the rolls. By January of 23, they'd taken out 10%. And by March of this year, they were down to about 13%. Wait a minute. 13%? Where do we hear that? You're the same as Nebraska. Yes.
Yeah, how about, wouldn't that be people that have moved out of this county or out of the state to
Yeah.
live somewhere else?
Yeah.
Does that account for that?
Yeah. That much? 40%?
No, not 40%. I think it's about 50%.
People who voted,
Yeah.
who moved out. So 10% of the people who voted in your election, actually 13% of the people who voted in 2020 are no longer living here. 13%. Okay? And it's the same in Coos as it is in your county. And you know what's going to happen. When I've done your whole state, it's going to be the same in every county. Why is it going to be the same in every county? Because every county is the same. They are churning the rolls in every county. It's going to be the same. You watch. Yes, sir.
Can you drill down, I mean, not here, but can you drill down far enough to get party affiliation? So
Not only can I tell you party affiliation, I use a name and address for every one they've added and removed. And guess what? We use that to go knock on doors and find fraud. What's happening really, this is what's really happening. Let's say a couple lives at a house and they move to Timbuktu. Okay. Somebody else, a new couple moves into the house. And when you look at the voter rolls, there'll be 4 active voters listed. 2 Smiths and 2 Jones. And then what'll happen is 4 ballots will be turned in for the Smiths and the Jones. But the Smiths moved to Timbuktu. Okay, and so what we do is we get the NCOA, the National Change of Address Registry, which the post office maintains on those people. We find out where the Smiths moved in Timbuktu, and we send a team to knock on their door in the Smiths, and we download the state voter rolls for Timbuktu, and we say, aha, they're voting here in Timbuktu. And we go to the door, knock on the door, and say, would you please sign an affidavit swearing you're not voting back in Oregon? And they do, because they don't want to be convicted of voter fraud. And then what happens is you just prove that there's voter fraud happening in your county, that there was people voting in both places. And you know that couple that moved to Timbuktu, they're not the ones who cast those ballots. Those were harvested locally and turned in. So you find that fraud. And that's what I teach you how to do. I teach you how to find those doors, knock on the doors, find that fraud, collect that fraud. You're going to find a certain amount of fraud, you're going to find a certain amount of illegal voting, you're going to find lots of dirty voter rolls. And that you are building your case that you're going to use going forward. And I haven't got there, but I'm about to go there to tell you what you're going to do next. Yes?
The states that are less Marxist than Oregon are still following the same trends that we are.
Yes.
So why are they less Marxist than we are?
That's a good question. For example, Wyoming is more conservative than here. And, for example, New York. New York, the same voting patterns are happening, but the people there can't even own a gun without a permit. You're an open carry in here. See the difference? So the rights are you are being more oppressed, more tyrannically here than in the other states. Yeah, but it's the same election algorithm. It's cheating in the same way in all the states. I kind of tried to answer your question. Okay. Is it too much? I just tried to pick a random name. Are you ready for the solution? You ready for the solution? Let's do the solution. Okay. The solution is you have to think of this as a war. And what do I mean by that? I want to tell you what I mean by that. What do I mean by that? So this is the 5th generation war. General Flynn has been going around the country teaching everybody this is a 5th generation war, that they're taking over our country without firing a shot. He's right. He ought to know. For decades, he ran our intelligence agencies while we were taking over other countries using their elections. He knows, and he's telling everybody that's the situation, 5th generation warfare. If you haven't seen this new movie, here's an ad for you. It's called Flynn. It's an amazing movie, flynnmovie.com. And I was with him about a month ago having dinner, and he stood up in the middle of the dinner, and about a dozen of us together, and he just said, look guys, he says, I can't express this any more seriously. He took his hand like this, he said, the situation is grave. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows the situation in our country. He says the situation in our country is grave. There isn't a more serious way to represent it. That's the mode we're in. His motto is local action, national impact. I started out thinking I could win from the top down. No, he's saying he's the expert in taking over countries. He says you start local. There's another guy, Colonel Mills. He says secure your county and the nation will follow. He's a retired Army intelligence officer involved in taking over countries. He knows how to do that. Or there's a lovely gal, Tony Shoup in Pennsylvania, out of the OPA. She says education is key. That's what I'm doing now. But the fix is local. You need to fix this local situation. Don't try to fix the state of Oregon. You're not going to be able to do that. But you can fix your county. That's where your power is. And my understanding is in this county, because of the great work of your grassroots teams already, you have a good sheriff. You have 3 commissioners. They have 3 commissioners on their side, that are conservative, that they put in Yamhill. Dude, man, they're way ahead of you guys. But you're ahead in the election stuff. They got to catch up. But they've already been grassroots busy. So I'm very excited about this county. And we need to form an axis. I'm just a bit common here because we've been working close on the phone. Okay. Anyway, so fix is local. But that doesn't mean you can't work with other local teams. But don't try to fix the state, you're local. And we're in the middle of a Bezmenov revolution. Remember, Yuri Bezmenov defected from Russia, and we're 39 years ago, KGB defected children in modern America. We are 80% of the way through a Marxist revolution in our country, and we're all asleep at the wheel. We're all frogs in the pot. We have to step up and recognize that it's a war. So I've been studying war. I got my Sun Tzu book there, The Art of War. I've been studying it, and boy, oh boy, we're starting to implement these tactics all over the country. The other principle I've been following is crystallized in this book by Chris N. Hall called Sovereign Duty. It was a really eye-opener for me, because I always thought of the Constitution as a list of rights, but it isn't. It's a list of obligations. For example, the Second Amendment is not your right to bear arms. It's your obligation to maintain a well-regulated militia. And because you're maintaining a well-regulated militia, of course you have to have guns to do so. And that's the real point. The Constitution is an empowering document to us, but it's an obligation. We are the ones who empower it. That's why I loved it when the guy wore the gun. Thanks for wearing the gun, because these are your rights. You need to be using your empowerment, and we're not. We've become compliant. So my strategy is not legal, it's not legislative, it's a We the People strategy. It's a constitutional strategy, and there are 3 concepts I want to teach you: interposition, non-compliance, and nullification. And let me just jump to that. Let me jump ahead a little bit. By the way, my biggest opposition to the work I do around the country is the GOP. They don't like my work because they like having control, and they're doing it. So the solution is 7 steps. And this is, I was going over this earlier. This is a strategy we follow. You get connected, so you learn all the wisdom from around the country. You're not reinventing the wheel. You get organized, you form a small team. You started that work today. If you want to be on the team or help out with this team, please contact Yes.
Beth Kaiser.
Beth Kaiser, and get on the team and help out, and then you're gonna make a local plan that fits your local situation. For example, you have a good sheriff and 3 commissioners already. I always tell people if you've got half a sheriff and 1 commissioner, we can win. But it's difficult, but you guys are way over. We have a lot of infrastructure here. This is a good situation. So you make a local plan that fits your local situation, and then you gotta do the work. There's some canvassing you gotta do, there's some planning. You gotta have events, because you need like this. Look, we got 50 people in this room. This is awesome. This is it. You already own your county right here. If you could get these 50 people to show up tomorrow at a county commissioner meeting, their blood would drain from their face, except they're good. But they would be like you would be able to motivate them to do just about anything. But I think you need about 3 times as many people as this, ready to go. So that takes work. You got to develop community education, have events, train people. You don't win with the evidence that we're collecting abroad, but you need the evidence to build the movement, and you need the evidence to justify the constitutional argument, which is where I'm going, which gives you local empowerment. This is a 2-hour class. I'm not going to spend time on that, but really we're implementing that strategy. Now, remember I told you interposition. Interposition is the first idea I want to teach you. This is where your sheriff comes in. So in New Mexico last year, Governor Grisham said, enough is enough. We had another school shooting. So we're going to put a temporary ban on carrying guns in public. Next day, a sheriff stood up. He happened to be a Democrat. He said, we're not enforcing that in our county. Why can he say that? Because he's the sheriff, and the sheriff is the constitutional officer for your county. Your sheriff has more authority than any other officer in the country. He can arrest the President of the United States if he came here. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay. He has more authority than your Secretary of State. He has more authority than your governor. As soon as you hit the county line, that guy is, and what is his job? His job is not to enforce the laws of the state. His job and his oath is to defend your constitutional rights. It's different. The police swear an oath to enforce the laws. The sheriff swears an oath to defend your constitutional rights. It's a very different oath. So anyway, that was one sheriff. Now, when he stepped out, the next day, 70 other sheriffs joined him. So it took one to stick his neck out, and then 70 joined him. That's a big deal. So that's called interposition. That's the sheriff putting himself between the people and the tyranny of government. And dude, you're not dude. Sorry for revealing my age. You guys in Oregon are tyrannically abused by your government. It is tyrannical, okay? You need a good sheriff. And for you to have a good sheriff is a very powerful asset in this race, because your sheriff can interpose on behalf of your people and stand between the tyranny of your government. You're going to need that sheriff. I'm glad you have a good one. Make sure he understands this is his role, an interpositional role. Now the next thing is non-compliance. So the sheriff, so in the gun example I was giving in New Mexico, the sheriff interposed on behalf of the counties. The people refused to comply. The people would wear guns anyway. Forget what the governor says. We're not going to comply. Are they breaking any laws? No. They're upholding a higher law. They're holding to the Constitution. Doesn't matter what the governor says. If it violates my constitutional rights, I'm not going to comply. Now, with the Constitution, we have a duty to not comply with any law which infringes on our constitutional rights. We have a duty to not comply. But there's a further step. We have a duty, and if a law is unjust, a man has not only a right to disobey it, he is obligated to do so. When the government says you can't carry guns, get them out and put them on. You're obligated to nullify that. But when you nullify it, you need to do it as a group. So that's what they did in New Mexico. 50 guys put their guns on, and they went on the Capitol steps and said, here are our guns, come and take them, Governor. Now, if only one guy had done that, what would happen? But they had 50, and there's no leader of this group. It's just a bunch of concerned citizens saying, we're not going to comply. Now, I did this in New York recently, and the people were like terrified. The blood drained from their face, and they said, Dr. Frank, in our street, we can't even own a gun without a permit. And if we had 50 people on the steps, they'd arrest all of us. And so I said, well, what would happen if 100 of you put your guns on them and did a protest on the steps. They said, oh, they'd send twice as many police and arrest all of us. And so I said, well, what if 1,000 of you put your guns on and did a protest on the Capitol steps? The room was silent. Somebody said, well, that might work. Okay. Dan, you have homework. Let's go. Get those. And not one of you is organizing. You have an obligation. It's your civic duty to the Constitution to get those things on and do a demonstration. You need to nullify that state law. It's absolutely your duty. So I'll give you another example. So notice I said interposition, that was the sheriff. Non-compliance, people didn't comply, but there was a third step, nullification. And that's what we forget to do as people. And we need to do that third step. So here's another example. In New Mexico again, during COVID, there was a small Baptist church, and the state said you had to shut down because it was non-essential. And the pastor of this little Baptist church said, well, I'm not shutting down. If we ever need a church, it's during a pandemic. I'm just keeping it open. And he went to his sheriff, and said, hey, sheriff, the first right guaranteed to me in the First Amendment is the right of religion. Are you going to protect my constitutional rights or not? And the sheriff said, absolutely, I'm going to do it. He says, I'll go to jail before I let them shut your church down. He's a good sheriff. He actually stood on the steps of that church week after week while the state police were on the other side of the road ready to address the minister and tape off the church and shut it all down. So he defended that church. He physically interposed between the state government and the church. So that's interposition. The second step is non-compliance. This church doubled its attendance. So the governor says, we're shutting them down, and people said, no, you're not. And they turned out in greater numbers. They did not comply. Now the third step is nullification. How did they do that? Well, the sheriff showed up on Sunday morning. He walked up on the platform and said, everybody, I've been reading the state constitution. It says right here in the Constitution, during a state of emergency, I have the right to deputize as many citizens as I need to deal with them. Y'all stand, raise your right hand, and he swore in the entire congregation. The sheriff's deputy. It's a beautiful example of nullification. This is important. You notice interposition, non-compliance, nullification. This is how we return the power to the people. But it's not individuals acting. It's the community acting. And you see, that's why I'm going back. You have to build a movement. We don't win with evidence. We win when the people nullify an unconstitutional law. And we need the evidence to justify our non-compliance. But you don't need all the evidence, you just need enough to show that your constitutional rights are being violated by this system. So you as a community are not going to comply anymore. That's where we're going. This movie, Non-Compliant 2, Christine Hall put together, it talks about the sheriff. These are great stories of sheriffs all over the country. I love this movie. She has another movie, Non-Compliant 1, where she talks about individuals and how individuals need to not comply. It's a fabulous movie. I love that lady. I'm going to skip this slide for now. All right, let me give you another example, and then I'll wrap it up. So in Ohio, when our governor, our crappy governor, said, we're going to limit groups to 10 during COVID. Which constitutional right does that violate? A right to peaceably assemble, right? That's, remember the first 5? We had the freedom of speech, freedom of the press, right to redress, and peacefully assemble. And the third one was, what did I do now? I did it in the wrong order. Religion. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, excuse me. That's the second one. I skipped over it. But yeah, 5. So this is the right to assemble. He's infringing on it, wasn't it? So a bunch of super moms, they taught me so much. They organized dance balls in the Capitol building of the capital of Columbus, of Ohio. And 600 of us showed up from all around the state, and we danced the night away. We streamed it online. We played spin the bottle contest. It was a super spreader party. They invited the governor to come and join us. I brought my daughter. We danced the night away. It was so fun. So the governor says, you can only meet with 10 people. We showed up with 600, and we invited him to join us. Isn't that beautiful? That's nullification. Right? Nullification. Because it violates our constitutional rights. We don't have to comply with any policy or any law that violates our constitutional rights. In fact, we have an obligation to nullify it. These ladies taught me this. The second, and he said you had to wear masks in public places. Those super moms organized shopping days. So like 25 or 30 women would show up at Kmart. They'd all take their masks off and shop while their kids were in school for a couple hours. Yeah.
I actually got thrown out of Walmart, Bi-Mart here in McMinnville.
By yourself?
For not wearing a mask. No, I was escorted out of the store.
By yourself. And so, but if there had been
Yeah, I
30
was by
of you,
myself.
what would they have done?
Yep.
So that's what he said. He was escorted out of Bi-Mart for not wearing a mask. But if 30 of you had been in there, what would they have done?
Nothing.
Excuse me, I'm shopping now. Sorry, you must leave the building, sir. Excuse me, I'm busy, I'm shopping. What are they going to do? Drive 30 of you out? See where I'm going? Nullification requires you to do it as a group. And that's the key principle. All right. Here's another key principle. You either use your rights or you lose your rights. And I mentioned that at the beginning. You need to use your rights or you lose them. Like in New York, they can't even own guns without a permit. They're so unused to using their rights that they've just rolled over for so long. That's a powerful idea. That's why in Ohio, I always wear my gun in the grocery store. Even when I go, I wear it every time I'm out. I don't wear it as I'm traveling the country because usually people now accept guns and I don't want to fight with the plane and TSA. So I don't agree with you. But every time I'm home, I always wear my gun. And someday I hope that there'll be a little boy who comes up to his mommy and he says, Mommy, he has a gun. And she'll say, yeah, honey, don't you feel safe now? That there's a gun protecting us. And by the way, Mommy's carrying you too. That's where we need to go. We need to use our rights. You ladies, start carrying your guns. Big bad man in jams, you know? It's important. You need to normalize this behavior. It's very important. Okay, so in summary, the strategy is this is a war between good people. And you know it's a war between good and evil because they want to castrate your children. Okay? I mean, that's pretty straightforward. And if you had asked me 4 years ago, I would have said evidence and logic and arguments and lawsuits and legislation is our best weapon. And I was wrong. And I took you through that process. No, the best weapon we have besides prayer is the Constitution. This is a spiritual battle as well. It's not just a political battle. And I think our politics are wrecked with our spiritual status is a mess. Anyway, right now the Constitution is our best weapon. And we need to fight the First Amendment war so it doesn't become a Second Amendment war. And we are headed that way all across the country. The temperature is going up. I'm seeing that everywhere. It's one of the reasons I'm fighting so hard with the First Amendment war right now. And you need to use our First Amendment rights like weapons. Let me give you one example of that. So in Shasta County, Northern California, we got a majority of the commissioners. They have 5, we have 3 out of 5. And we started doing all this systematic, eliminating all the electronics in their elections. But the county clerk was undermining every one of our steps. She was colluding with the Secretary of State of California to undermine our progress, and it was really uphill. Every time we'd make a step forward, 2 steps forward, she'd take us 1 step back, and it's like a constant fight. So we launched the First Amendment war against her. We started picketing her at her house. We picketed her every day at her office. She was so afraid, she built a fence. She spent $40,000 of county money building a fence around the election building, the county election building, to keep people out. And I was on a radio program one morning, and I was reading the book Rules for Radicals by Linsky. It said that ridicule is a powerful weapon. So I was thinking, how can I ridicule this lady? So I wrote a song. Her name is Kathy Darling Allen. So I wrote a song, Kathy Darling, Shasta County, right? And I sang it on the radio that morning. And by the end of the radio program, they were all calling her Clementine. But better yet, all around town, everybody started calling her Clementine. And people who were picketing around the building were singing, Kathy Darling, Kathy Darling. Every day, she went out on medical leave in February. We started the war in December. She went on a medical leave in February for anxiety and depression. Okay? That just sounds so mean, doesn't it? Yeah. War is mean. And in a war where it's a shooting war, there are dead bodies and guts and blood and nastiness, okay? In the First Amendment war, it's not fun, but it's a war. You have to think of it like a war. We took her out. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, Shasta County replaced her, and the county commissioners fired her essentially and put in a new clerk. And it's a good clerk, if it's on our side kind of clerk. We won that war with the First Amendment war. And it's nasty, but it's a war. So let's act like it.
You're nasty. Stop being so nice.
Stop being so nice, exactly. That's my point. In a war, you kill people. right? And that's a sad thing. And I'm not advocating violence. I'm saying let's use our First Amendment weapons, and we need to win that war. Now, here's another principle. We're the sovereigns. When you go to your county leaders, you're not going to them to ask permission. You're going to say, look, we have fraud, illegal voting, and filthy, dirty rolls, and all of this is because we're using the state system. And this state system is disenfranchising us from our constitutional rights. Here's the evidence. You no longer may use these systems to run our elections because every one of these fraudulent ballots is canceling one of our real ballots. You are nullifying the constitutional rights of our citizens. We refuse to comply. In fact, we don't just refuse to comply. We as a community are going to nullify this. So we're not even asking you commissioners to make a stand. We, the community, are making a stand. And we're telling you, you work for us. We're not asking permission. You may no longer use these machines. Okay? And then if the state comes and screams, the sheriff can say whatever it wants. I got the keys to the building. This is the sheriff can interpose. If he doesn't, but he's going to need you to be under him. Don't ask your sheriff to stick his neck out. Don't ask your clerk to stick their neck out. Don't ask your officials to stick their neck out. Build the movement sufficiently so that none of them feel exposed. And then if we can add 2 other counties at the same time, now what's the state going to do? It's basically, you're telling the state we're not complying with your stupid system anymore because your stupid system is canceling our constitutional rights. So we don't have to comply. In fact, we have a right to not comply, and we have an obligation to nullify it. So we're doing it. See how this works? That's how it works. The problem is we're upside down. We don't think that way. We've been compliant for so long. We've been beaten into compliance. When Antifa comes to town, what do? We call the sheriff. That's wrong. When Antifa comes to town, you're supposed to grab your gun, call your neighbors, and meet Antifa in the street. And I have been in 17 counties now around the country, I've been keeping track, where they did exactly that. When Antifa showed up, the people lined the streets with their guns, and Antifa just went back in the van and went on to the next county. And that is the purpose of your militia, to defend you and defend your community. But our instinct is to turn to the sheriff or to turn to government. When there's a problem, we all say, ooh, we need to call our legislator. Wrong. When you have a problem, you fix it. And maybe the legislature will get around to codifying your good ideas that you do in your own county, because this country is designed for you to run it, not them. You just hire people temporarily to do the busy work, but you're the government. We, the people, are the government. So we need to be defending ourselves. We need to be defending our own elections, because we're the government. Now, this is what's so cool. It doesn't take a lot. I'm shocked how few it takes all around the country. It doesn't take a majority to prevail, just a great, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. This works. I'm telling you, 150 people in your county, you own it. It's over. The county commissioners, if you fill that room, they will do whatever you ask. It's a great situation. When it comes to the Second Amendment, if the government says we have to turn our guns, what do we say? No. Come and take them, baby. Come on, Levy. But when they ask us for our ballots, what do? We turn them over without a fight. But our ballots are how we protect our Second Amendment rights. Our ballots are how we protect our children. Our ballots are how we run our country. And we're just giving them away. We're just giving away the power that of our own constitutional voice. Now, I don't get to say this in most states, but I get to say this here. Your government gives you your ballots. Most states don't do that. Most states require people to come in and vote. They've just given you the power. And you just give it right back. Stop it. Stop giving the power back. You have the ballots. You have them in your hands. Do something with them. How about on the next election, for the next election, they mailed all the ballots. You want to get rid of mail-in voting? You know how? Start using the ballots. They're going to say, we can't give the people the ballots anymore because they don't give them back. What if all you guys showed up here down here at the fairgrounds, sat at a table, put out big signs and said, you want to make sure your ballot's counted? Bring it in. We'll count it for you, right? You can sign in legally on a poll book. We'll keep track of your name. We'll show your photo ID. We'll get your signature. We'll put all the ballots. We'll process them all according to the legal procedures that the state uses. We'll do the tally here, and you can be sure that your ballot is tallied properly. What if you did that? I know what would happen. Your state would have a cow. Your Secretary of State would have a cow, and then the sheriff could say, I'm the boss around here. Okay, and I've locked up the machines because they showed me that the machines are ripping off our elections. See where this is going? The sheriff is a powerful player in this, but really, he's just reacting to you guys standing up to the state and saying, we're running our own elections. Anyway, there's a lot of permutations of that. I just want to break you out of your mindset because we're in this compliant mindset. We have to remember, we're the sovereigns. We're the kings. The Constitution made us, the government. It's not them. So it's your constitutional duty to defend your constitutional voice. And I'll just wrap up with this story, and then I can take questions, you can go home or whatever you want to do. I took a little while, but this is pretty normal, actually. I could go for about 10 hours. So I was up in Wisconsin at a little tavern out in the middle of nowhere, and there were about 200 people. It was a great turnout. And I like talking in taverns because everybody's in a good mood. Finished my talk, and people are filing up to take selfies with me and ask me more questions and everything. This lovely elderly couple came up to me, and she's a beautiful little white-haired lady. She said, Dr. Frank, may I pray for you? I said, well, sure, I love it when people pray for me. So she put her hand on my shoulder, and her husband put his hand on my other shoulder, and they started praying. And this tiny little lady, she started praying. And she started getting louder and louder and louder in this tavern. And as she kept getting louder, all the volume came down. And everybody started listening, the whole tavern. People started coming up. It was like an invitation in church. And people surrounded me, and they started praying for me. It was awesome. Like they were laying hands on me. It was a beautiful moment. And she was, about 5 minutes into church, she was about to wrap it up. And she was working up her ladder. She says, hey, thank you, Lord, for goodness, Dr. Frank. He's fighting the election Goliath fraud. Lord, he's fighting the corruption of the Goliath, the corruption of the government. And we just thank you, Lord, for giving such a big slingshot to fight Goliath with, Lord. And Lord, we just pray that you'll give him really big stones. She said that in the tavern. And so, but everybody is listening intently to this prayer because she's really going, right? And so nobody wants to laugh. Nobody's like, we're trying our best to not let it down, right? And so she finishes up the prayer and she opens her eyes and everybody's got these really corny looks on her face. She's like, she looks bewildered. And I said, you just asked God to give us really big stones. And the whole place roars in laughter. And she's like, woo! And she turned totally red. And I just gave a talk last month in Michigan, and she attended. And she raised her hand at this point. She said, yeah, that was me! It's a true story. It really happened. So, but I was thinking about the story afterwards, though, and this is a great place to finish this talk because she was absolutely right. We have to have stones. We have to find our spines. This is a war. This is a war for our country. This is a war for our children. This is a spiritual war. This is a war for our God. We have to engage this battle. When David showed up at the battlefield, he didn't go there to fight Goliath. He went there to bring his brothers lunch. And he found himself in this situation. And he went up to his brothers and he says, what is going on with you guys? There's this oaf out in the field insulting our God, insulting our nation. Get out there and take care of business. And what did his brothers say? They said, who are you? Go back to the sheep. Does this sound like your tyrannical government? Don't question us. Be sheeple. Do what we tell you. Go back to the sheep. Don't you take on anything we say. Go back to the sheep. But he didn't listen. He went and stood in front of Goliath. And you remember, he didn't go up to Goliath and say, I'm going to whoop your butt. He went up to Goliath and said, this battle is the Lord's battle. And today, God's going to deliver you into my hands. He threw the stone. Goliath fell. David used Goliath's own sword and cut his head off. Then the Bible says, I love this part. Then the children of Israel rose up and chased the Philistines out of the land. What did it take? One boy with faith is what it took. He would be the irate, tireless minority, okay, with faith. But if you think about this, Goliath wasn't the problem. The problem was the children of Israel were hiding in the hills. That was the problem. And that's our problem. We're all hiding in the hills. We got to wake up. We have to engage this war. We have to engage it yesterday. It's already too late. We got to find our stones. We got to plan our battle plan. We got to implement our battle plan. That's the 7 steps. We got to make that happen. I know it feels scary. I know it feels overwhelming. You can imagine David facing Goliath. You know, I'm sure his brothers are up in the hills going, dude, this can be really short. You know, watching him go out there. But David stood. People keep asking, Dr. Frank, what's going to happen in 2024? Are we going to have the elections fixed in time? And I just have to tell you, it's going to take a miracle. Because I don't think on our own power we're going to make it. But if enough of us stand, and God may do the miracle, we'll have to see. You know, what I know about God, I'm a Christian, I've been doing it my whole life. What I know about him is he waits for us. He could act, but he doesn't. He waits for us. And then when we act, then he can do the miracle. He can do it now, but he doesn't. He waits for us. So let's step up, let's be that. We got to find our stones. Somebody said that right now. Remember this one in Tiananmen Square? The guy stood in front of a whole army and he changed the whole world. I watched that happen in life. It changed me forever. Now, if it's just one of you going down and talking to your commissioners meeting, you're the fruitcake that shows up every week, right? You know who I'm talking about. It's the same whiny lady every week, right? You know what I'm talking about. And 2 people show up, it's a fruitcake with a friend. 3 people, they're just the troublemakers, right? 5 people, it's let's have a meeting. If you show up with 5 people, they say, well, let's set up a meeting with you, or we can your commissioners. If you have 10 people, then they have to listen. 25 people, you become suddenly their friends. But 50 people, now you're a real movement. You've got to have a group of people, and that's how you win. So how about if I invite you?
I would like to take some questions, but before anyone wants to leave, I would ask that you, if you felt the urge, if you're not involved, if you'd like to get involved, please meet with Beth back there, Beth Kaiser, and she will take your name and number as we move forward together as a team. Also, if you enjoyed your presentation, please tip your waiter. So, and write on the receipt that Trump's going to not tax that too. So we have that to look forward.
It's not, yes.
Could I simply announce that on Thursday in Newburgh at the flagpole, we will have an annual celebration from 10 o'clock until 2 o'clock. So you're all welcome. There'll be pizza, no charge. Just come enjoy the pizza and the pop and the fellowship at the flagpole. Bring your flag, bring your smile.
That's the 4th.
Yes, correct. 2 days.
Look at this. Priming the pump. Look at that. So I've got 60. Do I have 80? I want to thank you guys. One last thing before I go. Please do see Beth and please do contribute so we can help get this going across the nation. Continue going. And lastly, when I started, I talked about secure elections. Remember, it's the most secure election of all. We should consider one thing in this, is that in the last few years, the Department of Defense has been hacked. The Google has been hacked. Bank of America has been hacked. And I just want you to know that these are some of the most intelligent, well-funded people in the computer world.
Your groceries are packed, all of it's
The point of the matter is it's hard for me to listen to someone talk about safe and secure elections when Google can't even secure their own database. So we need to get active, we need to be organized, and I look forward to seeing your faces once again. So if you have any questions, I'll give it back to Don.
Sure. You had a question? Hi.
I know. So, okay. All right, everybody. So we all show up, not this Thursday, but the next Thursday, at county commission, and we tell them, we want to take our voting thing back. How long on average does it take, and can they just make a decision?
I wouldn't just show up next Thursday. In a war, you don't just pick up your guns and run at the enemy. In a war, you form a war council, and you make strategy, and then you decide what steps you're going to do in what order. And every county has a different strategy. In Polk, we had one commissioner on our side who helped give us information. We planned a day, and that day we didn't present a lot of evidence. That day was just letting everybody know and putting them on notice. Here we come. We're coming now. That's what that purpose of that day. Now this county might do something different. Because you have 3 good commissioners. Mary, somebody, we need to meet with her in private and show her the evidence we have and show her what we're going to do. And you guys need to get organized and find fraud, actual fraud in illegal voting. Because I think you can go pretty fast if you get that job done and you show it to the commissioners and they go, wow, we have a problem. So let's not rush in. Let's be smart because we're in a war. Let's make a strategy. The 7 steps. So step 1 is get connected. Step 2 is make a team. Step 3 is make a strategy. So let's get a team together. Sign up for that. Get it. Sign up. Yeah. Get a team together. Let's form a strategy. When you get connected, you get a lot of wisdom from people around the country to help you form your strategy. I've been working with these other counties, and I'm free, so I'm not selling myself here. I'm here to help you. So how about that for an answer? Oh, how long does it take was your question?
The reason that I'm asking you is we have a tight race for our one county commission. Right now we're all.
When's that election? Oh, you got time.
Okay.
You got time. 2 months, 3 months, especially, in Shasta it took us 1.5 years, but we had to win another commissioner. And so we had to get 2 of them to quit. And we actually got 2 of the 5 commissioners to quit with our First Amendment war. And then we were able to replace one of them, which gave us a 3-2 majority. So, but you already have a 3-2 majority. So I think 2 to 3 months from now you can have your elections back. Yeah. Yes, hi.
Hi. I have a comment. One, I'm pleasantly surprised by your presentation tonight. I am a long-time elections official in this state, and I am currently unemployed because I am not for sale.
Thank you for that.
One thing to remember is the county commissioners have no authority over elections in the state of Oregon.
Do they pay the salary of the clerk?
The county clerk is a constitutional officer in the state of Oregon, and the county commissioners only control their budget. They have
Budgets are powerful.
no authority.
No, I think you're wrong. They can cut their budget.
They can cut their budget,
Which is what we
and
do in Shasta County.
I have had them cut my budget
Yeah.
because they thought they could control elections. And in Oregon, our forefathers were wise enough to know that your sheriff, your county clerk, and your traders should not answer to another politician. They should only answer to you. So your clerk is who is in charge of what you have and how it happens. And that on your graph, the changes, machines counted your ballots back in the 70s. They were not counted by hand. And a lot of people, some of you
That was
most
in the
likely,
hanging chad stuff, right?
you want your hanging chads and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah.
But when you got this change is when we had the centralized voter registration system, not the machines that were counted. It was a centralized voter registration system when the clerks lost control of the voter registration rolls. And I'm going to tell you, I agree with you. This is a
That
major
is the main problem right there.
Oregon voting, situation.
100%.
Is voter registration.
Yes.
And there are some conveniences and advantages to having centralized voter registration rolls, because if you come in and say, I just moved to Yamhill County, but you already voted in Washington County, we can pull that up and see that and not issue you any ballots.
Right.
So there's that check and balance, but you give up a lot of control by letting the state run this. And right now, they are building a brand new voter registration system.
Yep.
I have not seen it well enough. I've not been in the business since January of 23 because I told commissioners who were on the ballot that they had no authority over how an election was run.
Wow.
And that they needed to stay out of it. And the clerk I worked for at the time lost, and the new clerk said, you're out. So, but your voter registration system is the key, I believe, to having clean and fair and honest.
That's what I'm attacking. You notice I'm not even attacking this. I'm attacking the rolls.
The rolls.
And that's the key. If the first thing you did is just cut the umbilical cord to the state, take the voter rolls back yourself, clean your own voter rolls, run your own elections, count them however you want. You can use jelly beans as far as I'm concerned, as long as the whole thing is reproducible and auditable. You're in control local, guess what? You're not gonna have nearly as much fraud. That's so that's why I want to return control. Thank you for saying that. It's nice to have somebody who's on the inside agree with that. And I like it that she said she's pleasantly surprised too. That's nice. Because as I travel the country, everybody thinks they know what I'm going to say before I say it. But it isn't what you think I'm going to say. And so I appreciate it. Anybody else? No, good question. Yes.
You mentioned that you worked with the country firm.
Yes.
What do you think of blockchain? Was that something you need pushing?
Yeah. So everybody comes to me around the country. They've been coming to me for years. Dr. Frank, we have the perfect electronic voting system, and they show me their systems and got blockchain on this and got electronic security on that and blah blah blah. If you come to my lab in Ohio, you're going to see about a third of it is devoted to electronic manufacturing. That's how I was planning to pay for the bills. And I build electronics for a living, and I write software and instrumentation control software. I live and breathe this stuff. There isn't a system I can't have. And so the blockchain idea works for one little part of it, but garbage in is garbage out. You have to control the whole, blockchain might fix one too. So that's my short answer to the blockchain. And I like Patrick Bernie's a good guy, but if that's the solution, it ain't. It ain't the solution. You need to get all cell tumors out. Good question. Hi. Anybody else? Yes, here.
The last Secretary of State that we had, I can't remember.
Shania?
No, the last Secretary, let me finish the sentence.
Sorry.
The last Secretary of State that we had that was a Republican died in office of cancer. The governor appointed Nancy Clarion, who had dementia. They ran her, and the Undersecretary of the State, Secretary of State's office, they ran him out of office and tried to destroy his reputation. So that particular individual, when the 2020 election was coming up, he said, it doesn't matter how you vote, you can't win. I'm voting for Trump, but you can't win. So we know, not only, he knows all that stuff. My husband and I went to a event 2 weekends ago to support Dennis Linthicum. If you remember him, he's a senator from the southern part of Oregon. He's not allowed to run for Senate again because he stood up and walked out when they tried to pass the bill. Volquist did the same thing. Dennis Linthicum, who I know, who I had an opportunity to question in depth, he's running for Secretary of State. We need to support him. The attorney general that we had, she tried to pass something when Antifa was here She tried to tell police they couldn't stand up to them, that the citizens had to bow down, and that the Tifa had all the rights. Fortunately, a judge in Eastern Oregon blocked her from getting that passed. She is a terrible person. And if you know who Will Lathrop is, he's running for If you watch The Sound of Freedom, he is the attorney part of The Sound of Freedom. I would encourage you to vote for these two people. They are on our side.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. Let me say something about this. I want you to agree. I want you to do what she says. Please vote for those people. But remember, Trump is not our savior.
Nope.
The biggest mistake I think we made as a country is we elected Trump in 2016, and then we all went back to fishing and hiking and camping and saying, we'll let him fix the country. That was our opportunity. That was our last opportunity in recent times to save our country, but we all were asleep still. We needed the 2020 election to wake us up and the COVID to wake us up. Now we're awake. Now we realize, boy, did we blow that opportunity. So even if Trump wins, even if he doesn't win, it doesn't matter. We need to have learned that lesson. We are the solution to the problem, not whom we elect. And I'm not saying you shouldn't elect the right people. Do your best and definitely get the turnout and vote. But that's not the solution. Yes. So anyway, I just want to remind you, because everybody's like, we got to get Trump in there and then everything will be better. No. We as a country have to wake up, then things will be better. Yeah. Anybody else? Good questions. This is fun. I'm excited about Oregon, you guys. I'm going to be back again coming up, I think in 2 months. They just blocked out another week for me to come back, because I told them to make this, but I think it's September. I'm pretty booked.
So gathering.
You already got me? You already? Oh, really?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I've done the Gathering of Eagles before.
Yes,
Yeah, so anyway, they reserved me on the calendar, I noticed today. My schedule, so I have 2 schedules, but I'm booked always all through there, so I couldn't get back before then. But don't let that stop you. Get some teams formed. We got other teams, and it's infectious, and you guys can take over your state. Take back your elections. It's a big deal. All right, anything else? Yes, ma'am.
There's a lot of email out on it.
I don't know if she's going to be running, with the LMA, I can't use, their citizens line.
With the guns? Okay, that would be my 18th county then. Yes. Yeah. So, in other words, this idea is not a crazy idea. I'm suggesting this actually works. When the people step up and defend themselves, it actually works. So let's do it. Let's stand up and defend ourselves. Yes, sir.
Why is there opposition in Florida? What is the Kool-Aid that the other side is drinking?
We can't hear you.
Where is the difference?
He said, who are the opposition and what Kool-Aid are they drinking? And I got to tell you, as I travel the country, the #1 opposition to my work is the GOP. There's nobody, the Democrats don't say nothing. It's the GOP. And Mike Lindell and I were flying around the country for about 6 weeks gathering signatures from attorneys general. We had 6 signatures. We had 6 attorneys general on our lawsuit. We were about to go to the Supreme Court. This was right before Thanksgiving of 2021. And the weekend before Thanksgiving, Mike was like all on the radio, woohoo, we're going to drop this thing, it's going to be absolute 9-0. You know how Mike talks? And Ronna McDaniels, head of the RNC, called each of those AGs and threatened them and told them that if they stayed on the lawsuit, they would lose all support from the RNC. Who's our opposition? Who likes the system the way it is? This isn't about Republican and Democrat. This is about power centrally controlled versus power locally controlled. We have to take back the power. I forgot to show you your graph. Which county did you want? Which county did you want? Which one? Hey, pretty lady with the long hair. You wanted me to show you your county. Which one was it again?
Lincoln County.
Lincoln, stinking Lincoln. Okay. I didn't want to forget. Okay, so I made a joke. Okay, let's see. Let's duplicate here. Lincoln County. Let's see here. It's coming. Yamhill. Lincoln.
Did you video the whole thing?
Boom. There's Lincoln. There's your Lincoln. Notice it looks just the same as all the others. Oh, gee, it looks just the same as all the others. Isn't it ridiculous?
So have you ever given this talk to any Democrat or independent, and what's their reaction?
I've given this talk to groups that had Democrats. The Democrats, you remember in 2016, it was Hillary screaming bloody murder about the Russians hacking our elections. But the Democrats have really good party discipline. And in 2018 and 2019, they just shut up. And they stopped complaining. They kind of went underground because they were making their plans for 2020. But it was the Democrats talking about election fraud, and now it's the Republicans. What do we do? Keep going back and forth? That's a stupid plan. We should fix our elections, and then just have it free and fair, and whoever wins, wins. In Georgia court 3 months ago, Professor Halderman hacked into the Dominion machines right in front of the judge. If you remember, that was the national news. And I always remind people who hired Professor Halderman. Hillary Clinton in 2017 to prove that our elections were hackable. He was retained by the Democratic Party. So it's not a Republican Democrat issue. It's us, we the people, versus central control. And in Oregon, it's very easy to say, you have tyrants running your state. And you need, Jefferson said, when the people fear the government, that's tyranny, and when the government fears the people, that's liberty. And then you need to flip that. You're upside down. Just keep you right side up again.
Right, but if there's stuff in all those ballots, are all those ballots